Okay.
Okay. And remind everybody, our meeting is being recorded and will be posted later on our YouTube channel. So does anybody have public comments they'd like to bring to the meeting today? Does anybody have any public comments to bring up at the meeting?
I'll do one.
Okay, Andy?
To me, this is a waste of time every time.
Yeah, I think it's part of parliamentary procedure.
Yeah, but I was gonna say, as long as we don't have any guests, we can do away with it. Because everybody else has the time to speak during the meeting. That's just my opinion.
Well,
It's like Steve's got a comment.
I used it one time, the public comment, for an issue that Jim Riddler called me out on something in the paper and I had a different position. I felt that was the appropriate time for me to speak to that, not during my commissioner time.
Okay.
So I have used it.
Okay. But I mean, like I say, everybody here today has, but those are things that I don't know about.
okay.
So.
Does anybody have any public comments they'd like to bring up at the meeting? If not, we'll move on to the agenda. And
Move approval of the agenda.
Second it.
all in favor of the motion to approve the agenda?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries for that. And next up, we have an attachment for the watershed one plan. River.
Should be the gray stapled sheets.
We have to approve the treasurer's report. So it looked like there was too much transactions.
Just a couple checks cleared and some interest earned.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of approving the treasurer's report?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the update on the River One plan.
So the policy committee met just before Thanksgiving, I guess it was, and approved the amendment to the bylaws that allow the fiscal agent to go ahead and make the payments and not have to wait for them to review them. But then we would give the report to the policy committee of what payments were made, and if there were some in question, we would hold off and take them to the policy committee also for their input on it. But they approved that we can make the payments. What's been happening is we approve the payments here, but we have to wait till the policy committee approves also, and that could be a month or two later. So people getting reimbursed are really waiting for sometimes 3 months or better. So speed up that whole process. And all of our payments have to follow what the work plan that they've already approved. So that's where if we had a question whether it really met the work plan, then we would take it to the policy committee and ask them before we would ask you guys to pay it.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. That's kind of a good idea. Next, the Exhibit A.
Exhibit A to sub-agreement for the 2018-19 grant. We have things really broke down tightly in that sub-agreement. So we've been making a lot of amendments to it. So this is Amendment 7. And if you look at your second page in the handout there, the stuff highlighted in yellow is what would be changing. And the information about it is on the back page of that. Basically, it's all within Fillmore SWCD, moving $30,000 of their TA technical assistance for soil health and nutrient management specialists to technical assistance for general RCPP projects. They had a lot of structures that their engineer technicians been working on, and they didn't have enough technical assistance to cover that. And their soil health and nutrient management specialists, they had some room in that fund. so they wanted to shift some over. The policy committee approved that in November. So what we need to approve it today, if it's okay with you guys, and then Fillmore takes it to their board next week.
So they're moving money from,
Soil health and nutrient management specialist to just general technical assistance for designing and installing projects.
so does that take out of the cover crop fund and all that type of stuff, or what is that?
Not cost share funds, no. This is all just technical
Just
assistance,
Basically
shifting it,
administrative.
yeah.
And that really is just, it
Where
can
their
almost be the
workload-
same people, they just
Yep.
need to classify it different,
Yep.
correct?
Well,
Because
it's-
it's under a different job.
It's the same district, it's actually, the people that do the soil health and nutrient management are different than the person that's doing this technical assistance. But it's still within all within their budget, just changing it from one title to another.
And that's just based on, they had more requests for that side than this side.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. So moved. Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to
Aye.
Aye.
oppose? Motion carries. Then, so we have covered B then, payables 30,000.
So that's payables for what the money that's gonna be shifted around. So what we would need, we have the invoice for it already, but we would need approval of payment contingent on Fillmore SWCD approving that amendment also, which they take it to their board next week.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Number 4,
Yeah, there's no payments or anything for that grant. So.
and on the back page here, that is, that's disbursement.
That's the list. If you go to the very back of that last page, in red is that 30,000 payable. So with that payment, that would get us down to a balance of 28% in that grant. So we've had a lot of projects going in and stuff this year, and really cut into that balance, which is good because it expires next year, end of next year.
You got a charge of, for 3522 project development, is that,
Those are old ones that we approved last.
yeah, those are,
last month.
what would that be for, what are they doing?
That was Winona County working with St. Mary's to do some modeling in the watershed to see where priority erosion and water quality concern areas are. And it's part of the work plan, and they're doing like one sub-watershed at a time. I can't remember, do you remember what watershed they're on right now?
They just finished the Money Creek.
Money Creek just got done, so.
So what they're figuring out where the water comes from and where it goes, or?
They're figuring out hydrologic conditioning for each sub-watershed. And then the next step they'll be doing is using, taking the next step so that SWCD can use that data when they're meeting with farmers. It'll help identify the most opportune places to put practices and what their impacts will be.
It kind of ties into Bowser's requirement to have everything prioritized, targeted, and
Yeah, it's their accountability.
manageable.
Measurable.
Measurable, sorry.
This 3,500, that's not the real cost of it, is it? Because
That's part of it.
some of the students though are doing this work for
Great,
Correct.
yeah.
credits and stuff, so we're getting more for the dollar then
Yep.
is 3,500.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
That's one of the main reasons, I think, that, for me anyway, that was one of the main reasons we're looking at St. Mary's is
Yeah.
you're getting a lot for your dollar, plus you're getting a lot of good education to those students too.
When they're in school.
Well, they're doing it, whether they're doing it remotely or not.
Parking lots are empty.
So they're looking at graphs and it, and stuff, that's how they determine where they're,
Looking at the soil types, the contour, the slope of the ground, everything like that, and they, with these programs, they can map the flow of the water and how fast it's getting as it's moving down. They can map in the road crossing to show that it's maybe slowed down a little bit from that culvert, things like that. They also use, whether it's cropland, if it's woodland, if it's pasture, things like that to help determine the flow. It's things that we do when we're working with a landowner on a small scale, but they're doing it on a watershed scale.
okay, get that
And
in
then
with,
they suggest like where to put
It helps show where,
screen or stream bank, you know.
I don't know,
I
does it
don't
do street bank? I don't think so.
stream banks are in there, because that's a whole different modeling tool.
Yeah.
And, and those sedimentation issues in the stream, that's a part of the stream budget that, or the river.
Some of it's from upstream, some of it's from
Yeah,
within
and
the
some
stream
of that is
itself.
getting redeposited from further upstream, it's just a natural process that's happening within the stream banks.
Yeah.
So what they are doing is more out of the stream banks, so just to help us identify where on the landscape we can do activities to prevent more sedimentation going into the river. But the stream bank issue, that is, we know that there's a considerable amount of the sedimentation is just being redeposited from stream banks.
Yep.
And,
Okay.
and that's a different beast.
Thank you.
okay. Can move on to grants and agreement, contracts, cost share.
So you get the big sheets. I think they might be folded over. So we have a number one and a number two, and we're kind of combining those two together in the agenda. There's a 1 and 2. We're kind of combining it all together in these 3 pages. So the first page is payment for 2 contracts for projects that were completed: Roger Roroff's Oriental Bittersweet and Alan Fagan's Grade Stabe. And then also a new contract for Adrian Roroff for Oriental Bittersweet Control, excuse me. So we're asking for approval of those 2 payments and the new contract.
Daryl, there's a presentation for.
Oh, I'm sorry, and we have a presentation. That's the PowerPoint one?
Yeah.
So that's Adrian Roroff. He did the work himself on his 1.5 acres of Oriental Bittersweet that he managed. He used loppers and hand sprayer and got around, and he was digging and crawling into all sorts of fallen down trees and stuff, and did a really nice job. His time he kept, or that he put into it was a little above what we had estimated, but he's happy just to get a little bit recouped there for his time and chemicals. So
You'd see the stumps right here that get treated.
yeah.
And it's, I don't know if any of you guys have done buckthorn control, but kind of like that, where you're cutting those things off. You need to be right there treating it, or you'll lose it. You won't find it again, because they really blend in with the leaves and the ground and everything.
Yeah, the bigger ones are easier to see, obviously. Yeah, some of the smaller stuff, and he got everything. He already plans to go back through and foliar spray any regrowth in the spring or summer. So he's already planning on doing that on his own.
What's more effective, cutting them and spraying them or pulling them out with a tree
They
puller?
have a huge root system. If you try to pull them out, you're not gonna get it all.
Okay,
Spraying them is gonna be much more effective because you're gonna kill that root system.
okay.
If you just cut it and don't spray it, it's actually worse than buckthorn, where it'll send a whole bunch of shoots along that root up because you just sprayed it.
Very Rhizobius. Rhizobium.
No, with a buckthorn, though, those are very shallow roots, and those are relatively easy to uproot, depending on the size of them and how wet the ground is.
Yeah, I pull them up with my skid loader.
Yep.
Just they come up real easy.
So when these guys are out cutting, do they have the spray right with them?
Yeah.
So they cut it, spray it right
Yeah,
away?
Yeah.
if you look, he's got a little spray bottle in his hand
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, it's kinda hard to see on quote on the wall there, but yeah, he's got loppers sitting there on that tree that, cutting down there. He's going to spray with his cut, so.
And some of them will have like a backpack sprayer, and I think the crew that comes in,
They all
they'll,
have the same hand bottles like that.
oh, do they do those too?
Yeah, cause they're easy to hook on their belt and walk around while they're chainsawing.
Okay.
Um,
'Cause I've seen some, not for this, but for buckthorn, where they'll have a backpack sprayer and they'll, even some of those, they'll just hit it a few times with an axe and spray it, and then walk to the next.
So I suppose like a fresh cut, that
We'll suck it in
chemical
there.
gets sucked in
Yep.
a lot better.
And some of the chemicals you use, you can just do a basal treatment where you just spray the bottom portion of the trunk and it'll suck it through. That doesn't sound like it works as well on Oriental bittersweet though.
you can do that, but it's definitely something where cutting it and spraying it's gonna be a lot more effective, just because that root system is so tenacious, it's got so much energy stored. Getting a good solid fill on it's gonna be a lot better on this.
Amanda, did either Roger or Adrian find any, green barberry thickets while they were looking around?
There's definitely some barberry out there. There's not too much at Adrian's. We just saw a few plants here and there. Roger in some areas had a little bit, but not too much. Yeah, it's not like over kind of,
Stone Bowington.
yeah, it's not that bad. Yeah.
It's
Also,
good to
yeah,
know.
we got some skill guys.
Yeah.
Some of it, so,
Yeah. That's a frightening thing.
yeah.
Lance?
So the next one is Al Fagan, had a existing dam, you can see there on the left. I forget the exact age, I wanna say it's like 50 or maybe even close to 60 years old. But obviously not functioning anymore, cattle have really eroded the front slope, and hence why you see the pipe sticking way up out of the ground. So he's right before you drop down into the park, Whitewater Park, as you're coming north of St. Charles there. Came in under budget, estimate was around 23,000, and the bill by Pearson did the work, Steve Pearson's crew, for just shy of 20,000, 19,925. There was some other cost share on it for about 77.48, and so that brings our total up to 71.95 and 12 cents, to get him up to 75 cents. So I guess neat way of looking at, probably wouldn't have had the project at all unless we had combined sources to fund it. So yeah, Pearson's guy is just finishing up the spillway there before it was seeded, so that's pretty typical grade stage rehab.
Do they, you said it was some damage from cattle.
Yeah.
Is there ever recommendations, maybe not for everyone, but, for some that we fence that off or?
Yeah, so they all have to sign an operation and maintenance that with this new funding, they have to fence it off, or they just can allow like small access to the pool if they want the cattle to drink, but they can't allow them on the entire dike. Or if they do, it's only, flash graded, for like 3 to 5 days, so they can rest it, so.
Okay.
Yeah. So there is an O&M that they sign. Holding them to that can be, down, 5, 10 years down the road is a bit more of a wild card. did on, what's above Lazy D, what's that guy's name? We did
Kramer?
Kramer, yeah, so he was, I went and checked his just cause it's a high profile site and the fence was down, so I called him. And he said, yeah, you need to get to it for a week or two, and I went back a couple weeks ago and he had put the fence back up to keep the cattle off the dike, so. You know, they're aware of it.
Yeah. So how feasible is it to follow up? on
Well, when they
these?
sign a cost share agreement, they're saying that we can stop in anytime in the next 10 years or 15 years, depending on the lifespan and, you know, look at it, so, now, how much teeth we have, I guess, we haven't had to go down that direction, but
Yeah.
when they sign the cost share agreement, they're saying, I'm gonna follow this and you guys can come spot check it, so.
Okay.
They're not all in pasture either. Some are in pasture, some are nothing even close to it, so.
Sure.
We don't have to, that aspect, we don't have to worry about on all of them.
Great. Yeah.
If the pond is built for a water source, do they ever still put the pipe in the pond and then have a stock tank on the bottom side?
I haven't done one of those in many years. It's an opportunity, but most are more likely to put like a above ground pipeline and, you know, bring fresh water up instead. But yeah, we do reconstruct them and quite a few have those.
How long is the authority for the SWCD to check on it? You said 15 years?
10 or 15, depending on what's put in there for lifespan, yeah.
So eventually the person has full control of their property back.
Yeah.
This is the Adrian Roroff, Oriental Bittersweet, that we're looking to contract, 3.85 acres. Most of it, is 10% slope or less. It's kind of up at the top of the, bluff there, and he's planning on having, he says neighbor's got a forestry mower, so he's planning on having his neighbor come through there this, well, either this month here or, early next spring before the ground gets soft, and then he'll come through at the end of June and foliar spray the regrowth. So that's the plan on this site here. It's an estimated cost of $42.35. So the contract's for $3,176.25. And he knows he can't get paid until after that, foliar spray is done in June, so.
So that's the third one on that list, the new contract.
We're approving payments on 2 of them, and we're just approving the work on the 3rd one, is that right?
Approving contract for the third.
What's the cost? That's a lot of money for 3 acres, isn't it, to me?
Well, with the forestry mower and the follow-up spray, it's, what was it?
They must get quite a bit an hour, that way.
Yeah, it was,
Spray was like 1,000.
yeah, the spray and the time to do it, is quite a bit. Yeah, it's just the cost of it. If you were to hire a contractor, come in there and use a forestry mower, it's almost 600 an acre to do just that, and then you've got the spray on top of it, so it adds up.
So if he does it this fall, he'll be spraying
In the spring,
in the spring?
or summer, early
Yeah,
summer.
usually with spraying regrowth and shoots, you wanna spray it after the sap's done pushing up. So they say the end of June is kind of the earliest on this that you wanna do it, otherwise it's not gonna take it in.
Do you
So
think
there's
that,
actually little plants there at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
And then he's gonna reseed, replant this to trees. and
Yes,
shrubs.
and that's part of it too, is, well, he's gotta put down a cover crop, so that the understory has time to, heal and come back through, so.
do you think that, this is kind of off, but do you think that companies like this here, that forestry mower, elevate their costs because they're working with government, with soil and water, or whoever? I mean,
Not really, I guess.
to me,
Mostly
that's,
we work with John Almas out of Zumbo Valley Forestry, and his prices for the most part have been well under what DNR Forestry, estimates. You know, so really, it's not,
so they charge $600 an hour?
no, acre, an
Acre.
acre, and then that's when like with John's estimate is just under $600 an acre for the full project, so that's a forestry mower and coming in and spraying it. So,
Okay.
that's way under in our forestry's estimate for
So you got-
mowing and spraying.
Less than 4 acres, at 600, that's, and you got a cost of 4,200, where's their estimate then?
We have to go with DNR Forestry's estimate, and so they use an average estimate based on other contractors' work as well. So we can't just go off of, because John's not been to this site, and he hasn't been on this site. That's just using what he's charging for another site. You know, so we have to use DNR Forestry's estimate, they use an average from what other projects cost in their contracting. So this could come in under budget, very good chance.
Is Bob Steinfeld the one with the mower?
He didn't, Adrian didn't say whose it was,
But he said his neighbor?
yeah,
Probably Bob.
okay,
And he,
So-
Bob actually rents it, the
Oh,
land.
he runs it.
okay.
So I'm sure
It's probably him,
it's him and it's probably gonna be pretty reasonable.
yeah,
Probably
So what you're
something
saying is the
cheapest stuff.
4235 is an estimate,
yes,
and, cause I'm trying to help with the
Yeah.
other, 4235 is an estimate, and we still bid the job out. It could come in lower than
Okay.
that.
yes,
It's
Yeah.
eligible up to
That's
this
just an
much.
estimate, that's not the
Yeah.
actual cost.
right.
Why do they force us to use a DNR standard?
That's just, with our,
Is it a forest or is it that's the way we do it?
yeah, so it's a DNR forester that's doing the estimate for us, and when it comes to NRCS, job approval authority and things like that, they don't really dole out forestry, TAA and JAA for us, so we don't have the JAA to be able to sign off on it, we have to have DNR forestry sign off. So they have to come up with their plans and do the final sign off on it.
Or we could use a private forest consultant if there's one around, but
Yeah.
When you say forestry mower, is that like one of these drums in front of like a,
Yeah.
end loader or something that's,
About,
yeah, so is this blue area, is this starting out as a somewhat wooded area?
Yes, it
And
is
you're gonna
forestry.
convert it into something that you could really just go over with
And manage.
with a mower, I mean, or a boom sprayer. You're converting wooded land into non-wooded land when you're done.
No, so you're leaving all the trees that aren't.
Oh, you're going around.
Yeah, you're going around trees. You're not cutting up all the beneficial trees out there and wildlife habitat. You're just targeting,
Brush.
the brush invasives, yeah.
Okay.
If I remember right, some of that was pasture, wasn't it?
It looked
'Cause
like
there's
an
a
old
pond.
pasture.
I imagine it was pasture land years ago, and that's why,
That's what happens
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
have cattle out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a bunch of it.
yeah.
Sad to
Yeah,
see,
it
it looks so
looks
much nicer when there was cattle out there.
Yeah.
Daryl, didn't we have a video of the forestry mower, or that maybe we had?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one
Uh,
time.
for the
Yeah.
local? That was cool.
yeah.
okay,
I agree with you, Leo, that this seems expensive, but if you consider the alternative, which is to go out there and hack each one of these shrubs and put the spray on them, he's gonna go out with his drum mower and hit large areas. This will really look nice when you get 12
Yeah.
months out from this. This is gonna green up,
Mhm.
and you're gonna leave the beneficial trees. They're probably doing quite a bit, I'd say, nicer job.
Yeah.
Well, and it's
Then-
hard to go around all the buckthorn, and there's a little bit of barberry, so you know, you're getting a little better bang for your buck as far as the invasives that you are hitting as well.
Thanks for your dollar.
You're kind of mechanizing the process, you know.
Yeah.
There'll
Which gets
still
a
be
little-
some probably hand.
Oh, yeah, there'll be a
Yeah.
little bit of hand
Yeah.
work here and there, yeah. There's definitely gonna be a couple of draws where the machine's not gonna be able to get into as well as some with the hand, you know, saw or whatever, but.
When he sprays them, will he use like an ATV sprayer or something like that to get in there, or what, how will he do that?
He hasn't stated how he's gonna do that, if he's gonna hire that out or whatnot, he knows he's gotta do it, so he's.
But you could get in there with something like an ATV sprayer.
Yeah, after this is
Yeah.
done,
Mhm.
yeah,
And he could come back once or twice
yeah. It makes it easier to
he
manage.
could come back every 3 years or something and go over it. with
So
people.
for example, in this scenario, we've got $4,235, we got $2,400 in the brush deal, right? You got $1,000 in no, that included chemical though, didn't it? $600?
No, That's just it, like John Allen's did it, that
Yeah.
was the estimate he's got for another one that he's.
$600, right? And then $1,000 for chemical, is that right? $600 an acre and $1,000 for chemical.
Yeah, so this is broken up kind of in three, and I don't have the contract here in my hand, but it's the forestry mower, the chemical, and then the seeding,
So $600 for an acre for the forestry mower, right?
something
Is
about
that-
that.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we got $2,400 and we got $1,000 in chemical, you said?
About that, yeah.
Yeah, so we've got, that leaves us the $800 to seed and a little bit of labor costs.
Yeah.
So it's really not that far off.
Oh, yeah, one to have, okay, yeah, so we've got,
At first I looked at that too, and I was like, man, that's really expensive. But you break it down and it's like, all right.
Yeah, I think I'm in the wrong business. I should.
so the estimate that we
What-
have here.
I'll go halvesy on a forestry mower, I think.
So the
She buying
forestry
a
mower
forestry mower.
and chemical together is, $38.50, so that's $1,000 for chemical and forestry mower. And then the restoration, which is the seeding, is $100 an acre, so that's $385. So,
Well, it helps, so what it really does, though, I mean, and I appreciate Leo's point, because a lot of times we see these numbers and we
Yeah.
don't really know how they're broke down.
yeah,
And it's a true thing, what he's talking about, when people with government tend to take advantage of it, it happens everywhere.
yeah.
It's not like it's a secret,
The
so
thing of it
sometimes
is
it's
to
nice
keep
to
that
hear.
up, once you get it, over years, is to,
Yeah.
keep it,
Yeah.
it'll come back in time, some of this stuff.
We don't really ever get to see how these costs break out,
Right.
so it's a really legitimate question.
Yeah.
I agree, it seems a little inefficient, but when you compare it to how many dollars are spent on administrative and technical, this is actually.
So you're saying you'll go do it for $15
Something's
an
actually
hour?
getting done with this money, and
Yeah.
that's kind of good.
Yeah, there's so much put on technical.
So the other thing to remember too is, like she mentioned, this is the estimate, the bids
Yeah.
could come in under too, or
Yep.
the bills could come in under that.
I got another question for you. I see it on the edge of woods is all over. Does it get started inside the woods, or is
It
it?
starts on the edge and it takes 4 or 5 years before you end up with berries. So, and by that point, it's bigger than you thumb around usually when it's got berries on it.
So the quicker we can end it at the edge of the woods, the cheaper
Yeah,
and
'cause
easier it's gonna
it
be to
likes
control.
sunlight. So that's why it reaches for the tops of the trees and then it starts moving back and then it starts toppling trees and it's just a big old knotted mess.
Yeah.
Just put solar panels over everything.
There you go.
So so when you do, this is nothing against RORAS or, these are general broad questions, because it helps us understand a little bit too.
Mhm.
So when we do these types of things, how do you know $600 is a fair price? I mean, I realize you have the DNR side of it, you kind of know what this is. It's even, when we do these grade staves, nothing to do with Steve Pearson, but how do you know his price is a fair price? How do we really?
I'm sure.
When I was the mayor, we always had to have multiple quotes, right? Now, we had discretion, we didn't have to necessarily take the cheapest one. But I studied that law and the state statutes to no end because I did not want to be wrong as to how we made decisions. Because I felt as though there were some decisions before that maybe were not right. And so I realize that discretion exists, but how do you know?
So on our contracts, we have an estimate based on average pricing, that we see in our area. And then it's up to the landowner if he wants to go get bids or if he just wants to choose a person he always works with. If he decides to choose the person he always works with and the costs come in high, we can't add more money to it just because they charge more. Now, if there was an unforeseen thing that happened, where they had to address something on the ground that wasn't in the original plans, then we can ask for an amendment to increase costs, but we can't ask for an amendment just because the contract's charging more. So-
Well, the checks and balances should be that there's skin in the game for a landowner, and then the other side we should be really that gate that says yes, no, maybe, and then there's, of course, the discrepancy. There's always that discrepancy in there, there's always that kind of decision process of, sure, they're cheaper, but they don't do a good job.
I suppose they use, they could be using, going rental prices, for whatever type of machine, would be.
And we do use that sometimes too, the Iowa rental.
Iowa custom made.
Iowa custom rates.
Probably one of the biggest problems is there's not really that many people that are doing this yet. Those machines are quite expensive.
And then
And you gotta have a special Bobcat to run them. It's not just you just don't throw it on a skid loader and go out.
Right.
You gotta have a high flow.
High flow, and you gotta have all sorts of shields.
And there's a lot of maintenance on them.
So, yeah.
That
I know
first
the,
one we did, we had 3 breakdowns in that first project, if I remember right.
The power company did the lines
Leo,
along
see?
our township road,
Opportunity.
and
It's the opportunity.
they ended up bringing in the second one, cause the first one broke down.
Yep,
It took them 3-4 days maybe to do a half a mile.
yeah.
I mean, it's not an easy task.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they hired it too, you know, the power companies hired a contractor to do it, but, there's still a limited number of people out there that actually do this yet.
High maintenance, high horsepower machinery, and,
Yeah.
and they get into, you know, this is brush, and you can do it with a Bobcat, but some of them are on like these big log skidder type things that can go on any terrain, and, you know, I can see one of their machines being a few $100,000 easily to
Yeah.
purchase.
We gotta pay the guy that's
Then he-
operating it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the administrative side.
Well, I'm sure they're charging more, probably $100 an hour, and you probably figure
Those
6
kind of
hours.
machines, they come
dollars
in,
an
they can do
acre,
something like
6
this in a
hours
half
an
hour,
acre.
and you think, oh, that's way too much money, but when you, when you look at what he's got
Look
in
at
it to
true
do it
cost.
in that kind of time.
Okay.
Do you have some more in the cost share, or, contracts?
So that's all for the first action.
Page.
So move.
Second.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries to approve the contract
And payments.
payment there.
So the second page is our cover crop cost share. We broke this down a little bit different, just hopefully it's a little easier to follow. There's 43 different contracts under 5 different, or 6 different scenarios, kind of. We have the first column is the 2020 contracts, so this would be the first year of their contract. And we have 5 of them that we need the board approval for payment, and those add up to 163 acres and 3,999, I gotta get my glasses on.
Yeah.
$3,990. Below it is the approval that the Joint Powers Board the Whitewater Joint Powers Board will end up making the payments on, but it's for 2 contracts for 60 acres at $1,800.
So you need a motion on the top one?
But if we want to do one for the whole thing, if that's okay. The second column is 2019, year 2 of 3, and 11 payments for 270 acres and $8,100. There is one that we're requesting to terminate, or I guess technically it's already terminated.
Yeah, it's terminated based on contract language.
So that's kind of more of your acknowledgement of the termination because they didn't fulfill the contract.
They didn't do it?
Correct, he didn't plant.
Yeah, some of them they didn't plant, some of them they didn't plant early enough, some of them they didn't plant proper mixes on it.
So does the contract state that,
It has to be
Pretty
done,
much.
they have to have it installed by November 1st or
well, my
it's
question is,
terminated.
does the contract state if you fail any of the 3 years, you owe the money back? Or does the contract just state if you don't do it, you still get what you had before you move forward?
We thought that
I'm just curious.
we needed to ask for the money back, but Bowser said, no, we don't need to.
It does state that, though.
That's what I
If
thought
they
it did.
signed.
I thought it stated that if you fail any of the 3 years, you need to pay it back. Because the whole idea is,
50% on top.
oh,
Or
really?
you could charge, yeah. Could go up to 150%.
But Bowser
Um,
said we don't have to, or Bowser said they don't want us to, or Bowser said you can't?
They said we don't
Three
have
different
to.
scenarios.
Up to our discretion.
They said we don't have to is my interpretation.
I guess I didn't bring that up, yeah, no, we didn't have to.
But we can.
We could.
If we-
Well, the only,
But
and
it's
this
one
is,
thing to look
We're
at.
not asking you to, but if you guys want to, that's,
discretion
decision.
is a great thing because, you know, we can look at it, the way I see this, and this is nothing, I know just about everybody on here, so it's not against anybody. The way I see it is if somebody else obligated to something, they took the opportunity away from somebody else potentially, you know? And so, because there's only so much money for all this stuff, so, and then they don't hold up to it, and then somebody else lost the opportunity.
But yeah, that could be, because I know they're in the second year of their 3 years, so I know when they were in their first year, we had a waiting list.
Yeah.
So
I think that was one of 18 or 19 that we have a waiting list, didn't we? Yeah.
Lance,
Yep.
how many of these farmers are planting more than the 30
We'll
acres?
get to that. Quite a bit. I got a
Most
slide.
of them.
Yeah, most of them.
Okay,
And that was the idea. The idea is that this
Yeah.
doesn't become
Right.
just another government handout that we teach these guys.
But I see where you're coming from.
yeah.
If people took money from somebody that was actually gonna do
Well, they
it.
took money out of our pockets, taxpayers'
Well,
pockets.
that's what I'm saying, there was a waiting list.
And we said, hey,
some
yeah,
people
We'll
did.
help you out, and then it was, well,
Then the
I
next
guess
year,
we
they
did.
say the heck with
Yeah,
that.
my
Yeah.
got my check.
Well, they only got their check for that 1 year, and that's one of the, Bowser's also said we could give them a check for all 3 years up front. And we said, no, we're not
No.
doing that. And I don't remember if we talked to you guys about it or not. We said, no, we're not gonna do that, because what if something like this happens? Our thought, the first thought I had was, we'd have to ask Thor back, and wanted to double check with Bowser, and Bowser said, no, we don't have to. And as we talked about it, our thought is we did get 1 year of them doing the cover crop. Some of them still did cover crop, they didn't have the right seed mix, or they did it a week late, or whatever it was. But it does not qualify for the cost share. And then looking at the dollar amounts, did we wanna go through that fight for,
Yeah.
if they did a full 30 acres, it's $900.
Yeah, you know, the thing of it is, you could request payment or whatever, but most likely you wouldn't get any back.
Yeah, we have no way to.
Yeah, you'd have no.
There's no,
Enforce
I
it.
guess I just look at it and say there's a line here where you've got to enforce something to keep people from
Yeah.
taking it and just saying, well,
I
if
think-
I don't, I don't.
I think,
Oh, yeah, free money, here you go.
yeah.
Yeah, well, if I don't do it, it's no big deal.
I know, maybe.
Keep it from being so loose.
Maybe Lance does it already, but to still in people that are, I don't know if we're gonna continue this program or not in the future, but if we do, to enforce the fact that we want them to make sure they're gonna fulfill it or not.
Well, there's a tipping point where you want it
Yeah.
pretty lenient because you want people to
Yeah,
get into
right.
it, and then eventually it tips where people are competing to get
Yeah.
into it. And then you gotta kind of look back at the other people and say, well, hey, you know, this is, we gotta tighten that up a little bit just because there's other people that may wanna do it, so.
And the adoption, I think, what we talked a little bit about, where you have the people that are early embracing it, or early adopters, they've embraced it, now we're getting more a lot of people are interested, but maybe they're not, it's not as big of a priority to get it in the ground. I mean, it's kind of just, you know, it's 5th, 10th, 20th on the list to do, so, you know, I think some of it is just, yeah, they weren't as serious about it, even though it was a pretty good fall for cover crops, you know, so. But you can keep going, and then I can show those pictures if you want to keep going through the rest of them.
I think there's always a certain fallout rate. I mean, there's no doubt we're gonna have that to a certain extent, you know, that maybe.
So
I
then
had a question on Corey Theeds. Did he get his in this year? Cause I didn't see him when I come today.
Because the sheep are out there,
So we have to.
Well, that was my other question, cause I thought the cows were all one time grazing it too.
the sheep are out every day at it.
So is that technically qualified? Okay.
Well, it'll still come, I mean, it's pretty hard.
Oh, they'll come back in the spring. Okay.
Yeah.
He's my nephew, so I don't
watch
wanna.
it every day, so.
I'm in a catch-22. I feel I gotta bring it up because he's a farmer. He's my nephew, and I don't wanna say, well, have somebody say, well, Corey Theed didn't get it in this year. I'm
No,
sure he drives by and he knows, so I don't wanna be accused of letting somebody slide because he's a relative. So,
So then you're talking about, that's in column 3, that is for
Yeah.
the 3-year, this is year 3 of the 3
Yeah.
2018 contracts. And we had 9 for 268 acres and payments of $8,043. And then the whitewater contracts, there are 6 of them for payments and 2 of them that didn't
I have,
meet the
I have one more question.
requirements.
So when we put on here terminate, is that due to default or negligence? Just basically the person says, I'm not gonna do it anymore? Or is there a difference between, hey, I didn't have the opportunity, or it didn't work out, or I broke my leg, or the tractor broke down, and I have a legitimate excuse, it didn't happen, I don't get paid for this year, do I get to do it again next year? So is this terminate saying we're done because they weren't able to? Is there extenuating circumstances?
So all of them get a reminder letter from me in,
Yeah.
mid or late summer, and then either a phone call or a text, or sometimes all 3, or an email.
Yeah.
So, on all the ones that it says terminate, we could probably use a different term, either they didn't plan it, there was none of the, I broke a leg or I had a tractor started on fire, I
Yeah.
personally followed up with all of them, or like one of those on the list,
So
they
does
planted
it
oats.
disqualify them next
Maybe
year?
that's a better term, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, my question is does
Terminating
that,
the contract.
does that, yeah, so does that disqualify them next year then? In other words, they are now done. There's
Yeah.
'Cause
no
they
coming
meet their
back.
obligation, basically.
Right, so they're now out of the program
Yeah.
100%.
Well, and I've asked them, do they wanna do like a spring seeding, like a frost seeding? We
Yeah.
could do that if they double the rate. Most of them aren't interested, they don't, so there are some options, but, yeah.
So the terminate means because they didn't meet this year, it wasn't, an act of God, so they chose basically to terminate their own
Yep.
contract.
Self-decision.
Yeah.
And we had
But
a
we
couple like
could-
that last year. Was that last year or the year before?
Last
That weren't
That
able to do it.
We offered them the same option of maybe doing a spring planting and,
What I don't wanna do is make it impossible, but yet, there's gotta be some rubber room in there, but I'm just curious what the
And the
outcome,
reason I
so.
used the word terminate is because that's the word in the contract.
Yeah, no, I didn't, I'm just trying to figure out, are they not eligible from here on out, or can they reapply next year and start all over?
that was one of the things Bowser said too, is they're no longer eligible for the Bowser cost shares.
Gotcha.
Okay, we have to have a motion then to approve we can approve all 3 of these in one.
So moved.
Second.
We do have a few slides too that,
Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
Well, you can take care of your motion first, I guess.
yeah. All in favor of the motion to approve the
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries then for the cover crops.
So I just put a few,
got a red button on there, I think.
a few pictures together of it. Actually, I was talking to Leo before the meeting, so, this is pretty common scene. Sometimes we don't even see the cover crop out of the ground yet. This year, quite a bit of it is out of the ground, but, that picture on the left, so we might see an inch and a half of growth, but, what's really the powerful part of it is the roots that are down, conditioning the soil and breaking up hard pan. And obviously, those roots will be potentially 2, maybe even more feet, in length come spring at planting time. So I just wanted to kind of show that because, there's a lot of fields that, like Andy said, it's hard to even see if the drill went through there. Now I did because I was out there and I saw the drill marks, but, yeah, that's a good question. So this just kind of goes through, we had 43 active contracts, we just kind of went through, we had 38 that actually met, and then we had those 5 that either didn't plant or they planted oats in the middle of October, and there's some of that, or they had the co-op go out and say I had a cover crop contract, go out and spread seed, and the co-op only spread at like about a half rate, so that doesn't, help us when that type of thing happened. That happened, I think, on 3 of them. So, to Bill's point, so out of essentially the 1,200 acres that we had under contract, I added it up, essentially 2,900 acres of additional in-kind acres that, farmers are planting above and beyond. So the picture on the right shows just some interseeding and some corn, but I wanted to show one example quick. Let's see if it pops up here. You guys might know Ryan and Dan Olson there, just kind of Fremont area there. They raise heifers for John Meyer, Quarry Hill Dairy, and then they run about 1,500 acres of row crop. So started with Ryan in 2017, got his first 30 acres, then his dad the next year. So they're in the spreadsheet that you see there, but went out and visited them this year, and they planted, like almost 850 acres of covers this fall. So 60 were funded, 700 and some change were on their own, you know, and so that's, and next year they're planning to do a lot more, you know, probably all their road, not only all their soybean acres, but most of their corn acres too, so. So that's a success story, that's not the only one, but then like with Ryan, he's, you know, similar age, so getting out and doing some in-field assessments as far as like water infiltration and the slate test, soil stability, all that type of thing is when they're kind of getting more of the educational component of what those cover crops are doing or not doing for that matter, so.
They're putting that 2,700 acres in like just with a no-till drill, is that what they use or what?
A lot of theirs, they had the co-op broadcast, and then they worked it in with a VT, at least for Olson's, yeah. Now they did like, I think 100 acres where they drilled it after corn silage, which is what they got, you know, what they got paid on, but yeah, most of it was with a VT, so they can cover a lot more acres fast, not having to fill the drill.
I seen on the way in, somebody had cover crops, and now they chiseled it. What's the thinking behind that?
I know which farm you're talking about. Two brothers,
Yeah.
one wants it black, one wants to try cover crops, and those covers were oats, so I mean, they only got
Oh,
all
yeah,
their debt
okay.
anyway, so,
Yeah.
yeah, different management perspective. So, that's pretty much all I had on the cover crops, just wanted to kind of.
Did you come with our cover crops?
What's that?
Isaac's, we put barley out on the bean ground after we took beans off, and then barley, we chiseled the corn silage ground,
Okay.
broadcasted barley on that, and that come pretty good. So we did something that wasn't gonna be alive in spring,
Sure,
but I mean, we just, Isaac's playing with it.
yeah. So that's all I have for that, bullet item, Leo.
So we would need a motion to approve
We
those,
did that.
We did that.
oh, that's
We
right,
did
never
that.
mind,
We did,
sorry.
did you talk about page 3?
So then, page 3. Okay, go. Thanks. Page 3, let me get to my notes again, is a amendment for Jamie Munt. We had 3 grade staves or 3 ponds, and after the site review and stuff with the engineer, one site the engineer recommended not doing. It'd be very, very difficult, if possible, to do it through our cost share and our standards. And Jamie agreed to drop that one, so we needed to amend the contract. That's on the bottom in yellow, amend, so it would drop it down, drop our cost share down. So after dropping that down, then we also have, that was in the Red River, using Red River One Watershed One Plan cost share. So after dropping that cost share amount down, we freed up some of that cost share. So we wanted to reallocate some of the funds to make sure we use up that cost share, because like I said, that ends the end of next year. Some of it does, some of it's the second grant, I guess. So we were looking at reallocating. We moved Smith and Jim Allen projects down into the Red River cost share also. And also with the cover crop, a couple of those being terminated or coming in at smaller acreages, it freed up some money, so we also reallocated that into the Red River also. So the main motion is to approve the amendment, but we also want to show you all the different funds that we reallocated and making sure we get that Red River money spent.
So we need motion to,
So moved. Yeah, second that.
all approve the motion to for that reallocated money.
And the
Yeah,
amendment,
Jamie's
and the
situation.
amendment.
So what's the one they couldn't do at once? Is it the one way back up in the top?
Yep, way on, Patster, the old
The
Patster
old
farm.
Patsman Farm?
Yeah,
On the east side or the west side of the road?
on the east side.
East side,
Up
back
that
up in
long
that
draw,
draw,
yep.
way up in there? Yeah.
The structure would have to be completely redone. It's full of rock. Apparently it wasn't done under our cost share originally. So we can't use that material for the dike. And the borrow areas, the closest ones are almost a half mile. And
There's nothing up in
very,
there.
very questionable. It's
Yeah.
very sandy.
Yeah. Well, it's all that ground all through there is
Yeah.
different ground in that bond. Yeah, I could see how that, I've been through that
Yeah, me
whole
too.
scenario, and it's,
I've hunted all of that.
and it's weird just because I'm close to I-90 and, you know, is there really that much water moving through there?
There's not a ton. I don't think that, some of the stuff along I-90 is
I
deceiving.
mean, is there a drainage point from, because the other
But I
side
don't
of
think
I-90
that
goes
one
that.
does. That one doesn't accept from the interstate, does it?
Because both
Part
sides
of it,
drain,
yeah,
It
part
does
of it
part,
does,
yeah.
yeah.
you know, if you look by Buckbee's there, both sides drain away from
Yeah.
I-90. So I can't imagine there's a whole lot of water flow through there.
What's tough with
Unless 90's
I-90
draining it down through there.
And that happens in some places. I don't think it is there, but some of our drainage areas, when we try and draw it out along I-90, there are places where I-90 brought
Yeah,
water that never used to go
yeah,
through
you
that
can see that,
watershed.
there's sloughs and stuff along I-90.
Well, but it's from areas that never used to before the
water.
interstate.
So is
but I
it
don't
just
think that's
eroding
one.
way up in that corner, or what's it doing?
Well, that's the Decorah edge also.
Oh,
So you get a lot of water that doesn't keep going down through the
yeah. it goes-
profile. It hits that clay and shale and starts coming out, so you get a lot of discharge coming into that draw. And you can, it's
Just a
not as
weird
obvious in
area.
that draw, but if you go west about a half mile or so,
I haven't been back up
Ruber,
in there.
Mike Ruber's,
Yeah.
there's a ton of that water seepage coming out
But
of
it-
his.
But on Jamie's, is it just channeling out, or I haven't been way up to the tip for them there for
It
years.
blew out the spillway,
Oh,
and I don't think that had a pipe in either, did it? Yeah.
Interesting.
You didn't have a picture, I think we had a picture of that
Yeah,
before.
it had like a
Um,
10-foot gully that
yeah.
come through the spillway, but, yeah.
Back when Claude was still alive, I was driving through there. I think I had Dan Reps in the truck. We were driving through there, and Claude was splitting wood up by the driveway, and drove by, and waved, talked. So actually, we stopped, talked to him quick, took off, came back, no Claude. What's that lump laying there? One of the logs kicked out, hit him in the head, knocked him out. He was sitting there bleeding. He was out cold. Pulled over, literally, checked his heartbeat. He was out. Started shaking him like, Claude's pretty old. Yeah, started shaking him, and finally he woke up. And I said, Claude, we gotta get you to the hospital. He had really blood running down his head. No, I'm good. I gotta keep going here. Jeez, Claude, no. That's a tough old bird,
Is that it for the cover crops? We have,
Yep,
okay, we're gonna move on to the,
We need a voice vote. I don't think we
I
have.
know we didn't get a voice vote on our motion.
I stopped it.
Yes, and so we have all in favor of the motion to approve the cover crops
no, not the cover crop, the
Yeah.
amendment.
The amendment.
amendments?
I,
Aye.
Yeah,
Aye.
have a first and a second, it's just all in favor.
It's just the vote,
Yeah,
yep.
Yeah,
all in favor?
aye,
Opposed?
yeah.
Motion carries. And the state of Minnesota Professional Technical Services?
It's to just update you, we got a new, they have a different title, Master Joint Powers Agreement for, working with, RIM easements, whether it's, working with existing contracts and also for working with landowners on potential future RIM contracts. And it's something they redo every so often. What I thought was really odd is if you looked at the expiration date, 2025. Very seldom do we get anything from Bowser that's more than 3, maybe 4 years, and that's 5 years on that one. That's, you didn't have the dollar amount, that was 4,000 something, right?
Well, to get the 4,100, then for easement checks, we'll have to do a work order,
Yep,
so.
and it's up to that. If we don't get new easements, we wouldn't get all of that, but we'd still get a good portion of it for doing our reviews every year. So that's all we had on that.
Okay. Go on to new business. Area 7 and Minnesota Soil Health Coalition sign proposal?
I think, Bill, you were the only one at that meeting? And there's a discussion that the Soil Health Coalition is looking at purchasing a bunch of these, or the area is looking at purchasing a bunch of these signs for southeast Minnesota, looking at banners, I guess, not really signs, they're 10 by 4. Looking at 2 of them per district in Area 7. And the Soil Health Coalition offered to pay for half the cost, and then the area was asking if it would be all right to pay the other half out of the area budget, the SWCD Area 7. The total cost is $3,522.42. So the area association would pay $17.61.21.
For 2 banners?
2 banners for each SWCD, so it'd be 22 of them.
It'd be
I was just gonna say.
$160 basically.
Yeah, there you go, I was gonna say.
160.11 cents.
We got $800 in a banner, I'll get it made for that.
And so, because there isn't an area meeting right now, they wanted us to bring it to the boards and just get your guys' either support or non-support for the association to do that.
Did this on Tuesday? Was this on Tuesday?
This was.
No.
No, this was about a month ago.
Yeah.
November 9th.
9th, okay.
Yeah.
So these funds
Yeah.
would not come out of our,
This has nothing to do with our budget,
No,
it's
it'd
the
come
area
out of Area
association.
7 budget, and we have the money.
but we still have to give our,
They were asking for an action for support.
Being we didn't have a District 7
Yeah.
meeting,
But
right?
we did.
Well, you had one, but they didn't have all this information
Yeah.
Yeah.
then,
Yeah, it was,
but they didn't.
I went to the in-person one up in St. Charles.
Oh, okay.
We had 6 people
Yeah.
there.
The
And there was-
RCTC,
Huh?
RCTC.
Yeah, and then, I don't know how many we had on Zoom.
What did I say, is there about 15 or 20?
Yeah, yeah,
So that's $160 a sign.
Yep,
yeah.
How big is that sign? Is it 4 by 8?
10 by 4.
That's about right.
4 by 10, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's about
Yeah,
right.
it's a tarp like.
And Area 7 does have, we do have money in our budget.
And that's what they're all gonna, that's all.
They'd all be the
that's what
same,
they'll
yeah.
So we want
That's
to-
No, actually, I think they offered, trying to remember the email.
They said they could put our logo on it.
Yeah, we might be able to put a logo on or something.
put it
I'm
on
just
the
saying
record.
that's way too in touch with the times.
It's getting out there.
You could look at it the opposite way too.
A local logo can be added to the signs to show.
Even will Bradley actually read that.
With an additional cost, that is an additional
Oh,
cost.
yeah, so if we want to put our logo or something, there'd be an additional cost to it. I think wherever we're gonna use this, we're probably gonna have our logo and our other stuff there too, so.
Yeah, we could have one of those signs right next to it or something.
So we just, as a board, say that we support him, is that all we have to do?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the next, who makes the decision of where it's?
If you guys want to make a vote, or how, or if you just want to do a consent, yeah, we all agree.
Yeah, I would just
We
say.
we would let the, Bill Thompson know
Yeah.
what our board feels.
Imagine if the majority of the 11 counties agree, then they'll go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Can't imagine there'd be any opposition to it, there's really no reason.
Randy Smith, no.
I think the
Is he
biggest
the new
thing,
one? I can't remember who the new one was.
yeah, when I was on the call, Bill was there, but the biggest thing is they just didn't have a lot of supervisors there, so I didn't wanna make the decision without having more, weighing essentially, so.
Let's move forward with it. What we gotta do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next, capital assessment threshold policy.
So is this a?
That's the green
Capital
sheet.
assets.
So we've voted, when was it, 2017, to set the threshold to capitalize at $1,000. We've been looking at, with the audit and looking at Bowser recommendations. Their recommendation is 2,500 to 5,000. The auditor says most government entities use 5,000, most of them that they work with. And so we were wondering if we could adjust ours to the 5,000. And since we never had a policy, we always have to look back to minutes to find out if we just did a policy. And this is only for audit purposes. There's nowhere else we use this, but we need something for audit purposes.
So what do you gain? So when I look at anytime we don't start, when we raise a bar like that, we start to lose all the tangibles underneath of it. They just become muck, and you can end up with $30,000 worth of stuff in the back room that doesn't get counted.
It isn't that for us. Like I said, this is only for the audit.
Is this an efficiency thing?
Yeah,
For
it's
the
just
audit?
for the audit, so we don't have to track and what's it? I forget.
Well,
the
see,
name.
this is right here is where it hinges, because all of a sudden it goes, we don't have to track anything, and you've got 10
No,
laptops.
track what's the 10-year
Amortization schedule.
amortization, yeah. So we don't have to worry about that on all these little things. The main things are gonna be the vehicles, our survey equipment, things like that are more
Yeah.
expensive.
It's that, but when we look at those things in business, it's really, you gotta go by relevancy. If I sell $2 and $5 items, right, and each of them are classified in their own group, I could say I got nothing in the store that's even trackable. If I sell $50,000 items and 5,000 is now the buyer, now I'm tracking those items. So I think it's relative to what we see as inventory, large purchases, small purchases. Going from 1,000 to 5,000 is a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
You know,
It's just for depreciation, or for the audit purposes. We still have the policy that says we have to come to you for anything over 500.
no, it's not bad. It just means on the audit, a lot of these other things don't necessarily have to show up, where it's not really being tracked or traced when we've got $2,500 computer that's now not even have to be put on the books as depreciated out over a 5-year span. So does that make sense? Because it's no longer, so we don't, there's no tracking. So again, it's back to the relevancy of what do we majority have as a business, as a SWCD, doesn't make a difference. So if we have a lot of things that fall in a $2,500 to $5,000 group, it probably should get tracked, and we should be at $2,500, not $5,000. That's the answer. I don't know. What do we have? When we look at that list, do we have a lot of things that are being put in there that need to be depreciated at? Our threshold is actually, a lot of things that we do is actually sub 1,000, because they'll force us to depreciate them out. It's just on a tax schedule, let alone for an audit situation. So I'm just saying that might be a pretty big jump to
Right-
go to
right
that.
now
We're
we
not on
only
a
have-
tax schedule by any means.
No, I'm just saying, but
Right now, we have two
When you
things
look
that
at
fit
that.
within that 25 to 5.
yeah.
And it's our old,
Network.
the network in there too? Oh, I was thinking the old tough books were within that. Otherwise, I guess these two things.
Yeah.
And that's why we were looking at it, and I can't remember if it was one of them or someplace it talked about if you have 20 or more, that's where they recommended keeping them on that list. And we.
I just don't see
nothing
what,
of
I
those
don't see what
numbers
this
are.
gains us. To me, it just means we have more things that aren't being tracked or audited or
It
make sure
gains
that
us,
they're
it
there.
saves us a lot of paperwork.
Yeah,
I mean, I still track everything. I mean, I have to track it for insurance purposes.
Yeah.
I have to submit it to MCIT, all our electronics.
Everything,
It's
yeah.
still all tracked. It's just for audit purposes of having to depreciate something,
yeah.
it just simplifies it.
Is this commonplace throughout the other districts, or is this something just for Winona County that we're changing for the Or that,
I have no idea what the other ones do.
okay.
But, like I said, the auditor, the people that he audits, he said most of them go with the 5,000.
I could see a large government, in large government agency, yeah, because you're gonna have a lot of vehicles, you're gonna have a lot of staff, you're gonna have a lot of desks, you're gonna have just a ton of different things. This is really relevant to each situation as to where you set that threshold cap, so I don't think we can really compare it to all of government. It's really relevant to each location. I just don't wanna lose track of, if you've got a lot of things in this group, you know, right now, $1,000 probably catches everything for the most part. You know, not, you know, we're not looking at filing cabinets, but yeah, I guess going to the top side of it's just gonna basically drop out a lot of that bottom side to make sure that we're keeping track of. a lot
It's
of
up to you
these
guys.
other things. I just don't see
Our
what
thought
it gains
is,
other
we
than a
really
little
should
bit.
stick within the Bowser recommendations of 25 to 5.
Yeah.
If you guys want something in there, it's all up to you guys.
I need a clarification, I'm a little confused here. The way I'm interpreting what's being said is, I'm gonna use what I just did yesterday morning. Instead of listing all of our tools in our shop and all the parts and everything, I got a $20,000 miscellaneous item there for insurance. Is this doing the same thing? All the small stuff that we have, you're putting a $5,000 miscellaneous box there?
No.
Just to cover everything?
No.
As far as tracking?
This is
for-
saying if it isn't worth at least $5,000, we're not even gonna track it. So
Just
for the audit purpose.
Just for the audit.
Yes.
Right. So basically what it says is the auditors will, if you've got $100,000 worth of stuff sitting in the back room, but none of it's more than $5,000, you could have $1 million back there, but no single piece is worth less than $5,000. You could have $1 million worth of inventory back there and it'll never hit your audit.
And that's where that other things, you'd use the number 20. But
Yeah.
it all depends on your business. If you have things or you
So
have a lot
that's
of
the
things.
relevant side.
then-
Is it relative? Do we have a lot of things over 5,000 and a very few under? Do you have a lot of things over $1,000 and a very few under? Where do you set that threshold? So I just think going from 1,000 to
Okay,
5,000.
answer Andy's question.
Yeah.
For insurance purposes, I have to list all our electronic
Yes.
devices to get.
Yeah, no, I was just using that as an example.
But I'm just saying, we don't.
So the answer to that is no. They're two totally
Like I say,
separate.
I was confused on what,
Yeah.
if this was for one item or for all the items under.
No.
No.
So if we ever had a vehicle fall under $5,000 value, it doesn't even make the audit. If a drill falls under $5,000, it doesn't make the audit.
Okay.
If anything falls under 5,000, so basically all these computers, all this equipment, everything you see, when you walk into that office, virtually none of it is on the audit. No office equipment, no printer.
But right now it all is.
But right now it all is.
Yeah.
But basically what this does is, this is what I'm saying, this is a big jump. It takes it all off the audit books. So none of it's getting audited. I could see maybe
The only reason the
25.
auditor looks at that list is for depreciation. They don't
Yeah.
care what's in our office.
Right, yeah, but what do you get? We get the audit book that says this is what we have and this depreciates out. Just seems really loose to me. That's the only thing I'll say.
And the reason, well, it was twofold. Bowser came out with a new operating manual as of July 2020, and that's what their policy stated. It's pretty much word for word, 25 to 5,000, and
Yeah.
the board would pick the number.
Depending on size of SWCD.
So, and then I
Yeah.
asked the auditor, and his comment was most governments are 5.
Yeah. Well, we're in the size of a government, a municipality
Yeah.
or a county or even a township, you know, they're gonna have a lot of big assets, snow plows and trucks, and, you know, this is more office geared. So, I just wanna make sure that transparency and, you know, we pay to have the audit for a reason, and it is to look at some things, and if we've got a lot of stuff in that, we don't have a lot of big equipment besides a few vehicles, so this would basically wipe everything out besides a couple vehicles, a drill. and what
Survey
else?
equipment.
And survey equipment. And even that depreciated out, you know, that's gonna fall off, so it's gonna narrow it down to a couple vehicles and a drill. That's a lot of stuff just clean right off the books and say we're not gonna track it anymore in an audit. That's my point.
Yeah.
So, does that make sense? Cause you're going
Yeah,
from
I-
$1,000.
looking at these
which-
computers, you might have paid $5,000 for them.
But they're already off the books.
But what I'm saying is, after you use them a year, and they're a year old, you might get 1,000 for them, so it's not really
But
making
it's,
that much difference.
The reality of it is that it's not lumped together on an audit. They don't take all the computers and throw them together on one audit and
No.
say they're all collectively worth this. Every computer is looked at. So this, like I said, this wipes off all chances of ever seeing them on an audit, going to file.
So, we'll,
So that's all I'm saying.
Well, I think, as far as having, tracks, a track on our assets, that's being taken care of. And this is just for depreciation.
Depreciation in the audit books.
And the
It's not
audit.
we don't even have to
Yeah.
put depreciation
Yeah.
in the books.
Yeah.
So, I'll make a motion that we do raise it. We go to the 5,000.
Second.
all in favor of the motion to increase, threshold for audit to 5,000?
Did, can I ask a question? Is that basically approving this policy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Opposed? Yeah.
No, I'll go with it. I
Okay.
just wanted to raise concern to what this
Motion
actually
passed.
means.
Well, I
Yeah.
was trying to understand it, and I guess I've never run into anything like this before,
It's,
so.
it all depends, this is what it depends. It depends on the group of people that sit up here afterwards and if they understand what's in that audit. Most people probably just throw it away and don't read it. But if you really understand what you're looking at, that is the accountability back to, this has nothing to do with Wanda, to the staff that are managing the assets. So this is saying, staff, nobody's taking a computer home, nobody's taking something off the shelf, nobody's taking anything, it's all accounted for and it's depreciated. It's beyond just depreciation, it's going down a checkbox saying, is this computer here, is this here, is this here, is that
No,
there, this
no,
here.
that still occurs. This is just for the audit.
The
Basically-
staff does that.
Oh,
The
that-
auditor
yeah.
audits the staff
Yeah.
and says, is that computer still here? You see, you took that off, last year's audit had it here. So what this does, like I said, is it creates a scenario where virtually nothing is tracked by the auditor. The staff can still, this, again, says nothing, we're not implying anything, but it is the lawyer checking up on the lawyer, right? Is the lawyer doing its job, right? You hire somebody to do something and they're supposed to do something, and that lawyer checks up on this lawyer. So it is, what it does is it takes the system of checks and balances to this staff and says, we're no longer gonna monitor anything under $5,000 worth of value. It's just there, we don't know anything about it. So it's not just depreciation, but it is a checks and balance system that says, check, 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 and it holds it accountable back to, does it still exist? So, because if somebody just drops it off the list and it's gone, is it still in the back shelf or is it gone? So that was my concern, because, and it's all relative to what is the majority of things you have in the business, what's the value of the majority of those things, and are we tracking it? Because if it all falls in there, then we know if a pickup's gonna leave, that's really easy. And we're probably gonna be able to detect that one, you know what I mean? So, it's beyond the audits are both, they're safeguarded. There, that's a good way to put it, so.
Okay, we're gonna,
I think
we're gonna discuss the personnel committee now. We're moving on to the personnel committee attachment. Do we have, got the blue one?
Yep.
We're going on each one.
Well, basically, the personnel committee reviewed the wage grid, looked at the budget, the 2021 draft budget, looked at the wage adjustment history, which I think is on the back of this page. And also, we informed them of the budget committee's recommendations, which were, they're also on the back, on the very top, to do no cost of living and no steps for 2021. That's the recommendation of the budget committee. So we went over that, we did our performance appraisals, and they all came out with favorable reviews. There were a couple adjustments recommended for the job classification description. One for Amanda to kind of change the wording of the used to say coordinate and implement Farm Bill Assistance Grant Program. We wanted to make it a little more generic to cover not just the Farm Bill Assistance, which we don't always have that grant, but just conservation cover planting as needed for CRP Farm Bill pollinator initiatives. And then there was also a motion, a recommendation to adjust my classification description, the district manager's position, to include seek additional outside funding sources for the SWCD. So those are the first, I guess, two motions by the personnel committee, were to make those two adjustments to the classification descriptions.
So do we have to,
We're looking for a motion.
We didn't have that on.
So moved.
What's that?
I didn't have that on there, so.
Oh, sorry.
So I'm a little bit confused here. What are we,
We need a motion to approve the
C?
A?
B for, basically B would be to adjust Amanda's and my classification descriptions.
It's there.
So we're changing verbiage in B. Okay. Seek additional outside funding sources for SWCD. You and I talked.
What was that?
Seeking additional outside funding sources for the SWCD.
Yeah, we added that to.
Each one, Daryl.
Yeah,
We need
ordinance
each one
book.
individually?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess we need individually, so if you wanted to make a motion for the Amanda's being the first one on the list, to make that
I so move.
adjustment.
All in favor of the motion to approve Amanda's? Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries for that.
And the motion to do the additional verbiage on Darrell Bucks. Or the-
Second.
Second? You got it.
All in favor of the motion to approve Darrell motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So then C is the motions by the personnel committee to, due to long-term budget uncertainty due to the COVID-19 pandemic, freeze wages, no cost of living for anyone, and freeze step increases for Darrell, Amanda, and Lance, and approve step increase for Wanda due to workload responsibilities. It would be effective January 1st, 21.
We need a motion for that?
We do.
Second.
Do we have in our budget, up under A, it says 2.5 cost of living increase? Is that built into our budget currently?
Yep.
And
If you flip it on the back, it'll show you what those cost savings are for each scenario.
So the draft budget, we won't approve the budget till January. But the draft budget includes a 2.5% and step increases. When we did that, though, we had the discussion then that we don't expect that to happen, just because we knew something was gonna change due to the COVID. So what we did was we put together some scenarios, and that's what's in yellow above there. If we did the no cost of living and no steps, the recommendation of the budget committee, if we did just like a 2.5%, and no step, if we did a 3% cost of living, no step, or if we did no cost of living but steps for everybody, those dollar amounts to the left are what those would save off from the existing budget, the draft budget.
Jerry recommended a 10% cut.
What's that?
He did.
I'm sorry, my hearing aids aren't working.
No, that's okay.
I'm having difficulty.
So the only thing that's really changed here was, I know we just discussed with the COVID-19 and so many people out and doing what they're doing, you know, we just said, hey, let's hold off for this year. So the only thing that got added here was Wanda, is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The step,
The step.
not increased
Now I'm with you,
Gosh. What's that?
I say now I'm with you.
There you go.
And I
That,
think,
that's the difference between the budget committee's recommendation and the personnel committee's recommendation.
and the cost of that step was 20,
It was less than $2,000, I can't remember what it was. Did you- I don't remember,
I
sorry.
thought it was like 2,800 or
I'm
2,200 or something,
almost positive it was under two,
under two.
yeah.
I thought you told me it was under 2, I guess I didn't.
Yeah, maybe it was 18, maybe that's what it was. 19.
Yeah,
I guess my question is, how much uncertainty do we have from, I mean, is our budget gonna drop because of COVID-19 in 2021?
We have no idea. We really, the legislative session starts in February, I believe. It's not always the same days, but, and it ends in May. And this is just a guess, my guess is that it'll probably end up being a special session, because I can't imagine them figuring things out before the end of the session. So my guess is we won't have a clue about 2022 or 23 funding until June, July.
Because our funding for 21 is already set.
Yep,
So what I'm thinking
I guess
is,
the county, you approve your budget tonight?
Yeah.
With the
So
COVID deal, we
That's
just
the only thing
said,
that's not said is the county.
there's a lot of people that don't even
And I'm
have jobs
assuming
right now.
it's
and
kind of
Right.
set.
we just said, let's, everybody just, when Jerry said, drop, everybody should take a 10% cut. I said, well, and I said, well, you know, there are people that are taking a lot more than that in the industry, but can we just let things be this year and everybody just kind of be satisfied, you know, and reevaluate. Well, no, on the budget side, we don't know what's all gonna happen, so we said just status quo, and we all just hang, you know, get through a year here, figure out how this goes. I really personally don't think it'd be a good idea to give anybody anything on a year where there's other people that are facing jobs, you know, and losses, and just the fact that we don't get to keep their jobs and keep going, where there's a lot of people that I know that are hurting right now, pretty bad, you know, lose their house type scenarios. So that's why I just thought, my recommendation was just leave it, just no cuts, no raises, just everybody just hold tight for a year and let's get through this and I thought we were trying to save face in government by just saying, hey, we're all lucky we still got, not me, but good benefits and, you know, keep going. That was my thought process.
and I'm looking out to next year. This year, we've got it to do it. Next
But are we
year, we
gonna
might
have
be in a hell of a lot worse situation where, and
So
then
you're
you're
with
asking
Jerry
them
on
2
10%
years in a
cut.
row to take a freeze, or maybe 2 years, depending on, you know, what happens, then possibly taking a cut. So,
And
I
there's
guess
people that
that's-
done it. I know people that, I mean, Mayo Clinic, they did it, you know, they cut people's wages. And
yeah.
there's a lot of people out there that, you know, it's unfortunate. I don't agree with any of it, but
That's been one of my concerns, and my recommendation was a freeze also, but I am very concerned. We had positive reviews on everybody, which is a great thing. When I'm looking at this table from 2012 to 2015, all 4 years there was a 0 for something. And I worry that if we do it now, like you're saying, it's almost guaranteed it's 22, and it's really not just 2022 funding, but also 23 because they pass a biennium. So if there are cuts or freezes by the state, that's gonna be 2 more years where we'll probably have zeros. And in this 22 to 2015, when we had those zeros, we lost 2 of our 4 employees going to greener pastures. And I worry about the long-term, just like I worry about our long-term budget, I also worry about our long-term staffing.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, and that's the risk in any business, is trying to figure out cash flow and what you can afford to pay people and everything else. I mean, that's everywhere.
Well, the reason we made the decision that we did, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, and why we followed most of your agreement, you know, or your recommendations, except for Wanda's, you know, step increases, that I think we all appreciate, you know, the job that Wanda does. I don't know if most of us actually know, you know, what she all does, but she does a lot. You know, a lot of stuff, you know, and she does an excellent job. And this is not saying that the rest of the staff doesn't do an excellent job.
Oh, yes, it does.
No, we were just trying to even them, because Wanda was not being paid.
Significantly less paid.
Yeah, she was being paid less.
If
yeah.
the staff thinks that, then I want to make that clarification right now, that we feel that the rest of the staff does an excellent job.
Yeah.
In our thought process, you know, the budget committee was just, if it's just flat, there's no, you know, one is better than the next, and true, everybody got a favorable review, but only one gets something, you know, this just, due to the circumstances, just wipe it out. That's why we did what we did. It was just
And I understand that.
flat zero. So that way there was no favoritism or anything, you know, hey, you work harder than this one, just due to the year, it is what it is. It's a flat playing field, everybody hang tight. So that's why we kind of come up with what we did.
And I think everybody's got to remember too, the budget committee needs to make their recommendation based on the budget. And the personnel committee needs to make their recommendation based on
The person.
personnel. Then the board as a whole needs to make their decision.
And we looked at
both
it,
those
looking
recommendations.
forward, what's gonna happen, we don't know, you know. We don't know what we got coming, so the easiest thing to do is just everybody hold tight. Be thankful you still have what you had. There's a lot of people that are not in that position, and there's a lot of people that are taking pay cuts right now, so that's why we did what we did.
So, one question I had, or a suggestion, is whatever you guys decide you want to do as a board as a whole, can you make part of that decision to also reevaluate maybe after the legislative session, or after we know what 22, 23 are going to look like? It may be May, June, July, whatever, that we could relook at this. And maybe we say we should have done we should have made some drastic cuts, who knows? Or maybe we say we did the right thing, or maybe we say it's not as bad as we thought we could.
I think we can
Do
revisit
something.
it, but I don't wanna set anything in stone today that's saying we're gonna, you know, this is
I
what
guess-
it's gonna be.
Being they're sitting in the room and they are our employees, why don't we ask them if they're comfortable with these things? Would it, if they got a freeze, would they be looking for something else? Or is that out of line?
Well,
It's probably not proper to ask that.
Okay, I'm just asking, because, like I say, I would sure hate to freeze it this year and then next year ask them to take a 2 or 3 or 4% cut because the money's not there.
Yeah.
It would be easier for me to do that if they had the increase this year, then that would only put them down 1, 2, or 3% from what they were from last year.
And this is the crazy part, you know, that's hard. I have employees, right? And it's always hard because, you know, you sit and you scrutinize all these other expenses, but really what you're doing is saying, hey, we're safeguarding in case some things like this happens. You don't have to take a cut. How do you know what you don't know? And so you kind of became put on the spot, you gotta be a little bit thick-skinned to look at people and say, hey, you know, I'm sorry, but this is the way it is. Don't ever let a business when the money's not there, you're the first one to not eat, you know, and I can attest to that. So it is difficult, and it is a safeguard to actually keep the whole system and the train moving, because every one of these adds up. $1,200 he was looking at, this, that, it all adds up at the end to somebody's wage. So I'm gonna just go back to my original standing. It just freezes out for right now. And
the reason that, Bill was right, that we wanted just to level because she's being paid less than the others for this, basically, you know, so we didn't raise the cost of living, but just the grid,
Just moved her one step in.
one step up.
Yeah.
So she's still not where the others are, but it's closer now, but.
I just feel bad giving keeping everybody under one pretense, and this has nothing to do with you, Wanda, you know that. To me, it was just a static, hey, everybody be cool, be happy, and that way there is no, well, everybody but you get to win. You know, that's what, I was just trying to avoid that, so there's nobody getting upset, you know.
Can I make a quick comment?
Absolutely.
I think for the past few years, I definitely noticed that on the pay grid, there's a big discrepancy between what Wanda gets paid and the rest of us do, and I feel that giving her a step that she well deserves is nothing against the rest of us. I think that I would not see that as a affront to me, so.
I think maybe that's what Andy was asking is, hey, would everybody be cool with this?
Well, he was asking
No,
a little
not-
bit more, he was asking a little bit more than that.
Yeah,
If they
no,
were gonna
I-
take
Maybe we'll
another
bring her
job.
back up to about 40,000.
I probably
right
shouldn't
down,
say
right
this.
down here hovering on the runway.
I probably shouldn't say this, but in any organization I've ever been in, who's the one who keeps everything going? It used to be called the secretary, now it's the office manager. She knows what Lance's doing, she knows what everybody's doing, she's keeping
We
track of
get
all
it.
of this. I always thought they were always underpaid, that's my personal opinion.
I don't agree or disagree.
Because they're just as important as everybody else in the office.
I have one, I know.
So, you know, I'm looking at, like I said, the long-term effect that next year we might be sitting here asking everybody to take a 2 or 3% cut. We have no idea.
No, we don't.
We've got the money this year, budgeted for it, so that's my opinion. You guys can do whatever you want. That's just that's what I'm looking at is a year or two down the road where we might have to cut.
At the time of the budget committee meeting, I wasn't aware that Wanda was underpaid. So I'm all for her
As long as nobody else is
increase.
upset, that's my thing. The easiest thing I saw was just everybody was the same.
I would go one step further, say even if we did do the 2.5, I still think Wanda should get her step increase.
The way it sits right now, everything just stays the same. Wanda gets a step increase,
Okay.
which is more than what it was, which is more than a pay cut that was discussed too for everybody.
Nobody
So,
gets a cost of living.
Just,
increase.
everything stays the same. She gets a step.
She gets a step increase.
I'm gonna I'll second the motion to go along with number C, or letter C.
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve C?
Aye.
Alright,
Opposed? Motion carries.
now we almost have to vote the other ones, don't we?
No, it's all in one.
Because the cost of living was not an automatic.
No, that was all.
There's no
that was part
change,
of
so
the
nothing
motion.
changes.
There's no change in that.
Right. So the only thing we did was C.
We're going to
Step increase is the only
discuss
change.
the office space update that USDA requests for expression of interest in.
So, 10 years later, at least 10 years later, the ad actually went out in the paper, the St. Charles Press, the Lewiston Journal, is it the Advertiser? And I think they sent it to Winona, but it sounds like it may not have been in the papers down there yet, or I don't know. But the USDA is advertising for space. They have a request for expression of interest is due tomorrow. But that ad is only for USDA. It talks about square footage they need, the number of parking spots, things like that, things that they need.
Pull through, I didn't know.
Yep. But everything in that is only for USDA. So the ball has started rolling. They will be getting a new lease of some type or other. Nobody knows yet if it's gonna be a remodel of where we're at, a remodel, maybe it'd be here, maybe it'd be somebody else in the community. The ad is specific to the Lewiston city limits, and it is a 10-year lease.
I don't know why they wouldn't take advantage of this building.
It's all up to the landlord if he wants to put in a bid. And they have talked to me a couple times about it and asking, why is this so different? The reason I'm mentioning this now to you guys too is I had to remind them that this is just USDA. It does not include us.
Should turn that light on.
What's that? We have another thing we're gonna have in there, sorry. Another slide later.
So this is the formality for the USDA though, just
To start the
yeah,
process.
it's the formality.
But the ad is out there for them,
Yeah,
so
so-
we need to start figuring out what we wanna do. So what we're recommending is, looking at, we already have a partner relations committee, maybe use that to, start putting together some ideas to bring to the board as a whole of what we wanna look for. Because regardless of what happens, even if it's a remodel, we will no longer be commingled with USDA.
Yeah, will be
So
petitioned off.
There'll be a wall and locked doors that they have their spot and we have our spot. We have completely separate lease, completely separate
Does the
everything.
landlord pay the remodel or does USDA?
That
or
would all be part
SWCD
of,
negotiation?
yeah. So what we would have to do is, we'd have to say, okay, how many square feet we need and why do we need it? Do we need it? Right now, we have 4.5 employees, but we also rent space out to the Whitewater Joint Powers Board. We rent space out through the end of this month to the Southeast Technical Support Joint Powers Board. We share our conference room, we share our lunchroom, we share storage, we share IT, we share hallway space, all that's
That's no
shared.
longer-
Now, when we are on our own, all that comes into our square footage. So our square footage is gonna go up from where we are now.
How are they gonna manage the bathroom situation?
That, it would all be a remodel, so there'd probably
So
be,
you
my
don't
guess,
want-
if they did something there, maybe they'd have a hall
They have a
between
door
us
with
and
a
them.
keypad lock or something?
Yeah.
So you no longer can share the lunchroom and stuff.
Nope.
So,
What's the reasoning behind that?
That's the way all the USDA leases, new leases are going.
it only.
As far as our square footage, it's gonna hurt us, cause we're gonna have to have more.
They're gonna cost, our
But
lease is gonna be
it's gonna help us in a lot of ways where, if there's a government shutdown, there's
It doesn't
been
affect you.
arguments with USDA forever that, well, if we shut down, you cannot come in our office either. And it's not been bad in our office, but around the state, there's been USDA offices that are just absolutely insistent that the SWCD has to close their doors too, even though the SWCD hasn't shut down. So it would relieve a lot of pressure from things like that. It would give us a little more of our own identity, where we are the SWCD. Right now, people come in, they a lot of times don't know if they're talking to SWCD or NRCS. So it would give us our own identity. We would also have to have our own phone lines. We already have our own computer network and stuff, so that wouldn't be a big issue either. But it's things that we would like to have a committee to just discuss this and put together some ideas to bring to the board on what we want to look for. Because, like I said, the landlord, our current landlord has talked to me a couple times. They would like us to stay, they would like USDA to stay, but they would need to know what we need also. Because, like I said, that advertisement didn't include anything about us. If there's other people that show interest to USDA, we need to see if we can find out who they are and let them know that we want to try and, I'm assuming we want to stay co-located right beside them if at all possible,
Well, that'd be the best scenario.
yeah.
So
Which we
what's
still
wrong,
do.
what's wrong with where you're at now? I mean, really, with a couple, I mean, this is easy, you put a wall in the middle of the lunchroom, you put
Yeah,
a,
it
put
could be
put a door
remodeled.
and a door on the bathrooms, you put a keypad to get in and out, and you're done.
It could
So is
easily
there a
be
lack of
remodeled.
room in there, or what's the deal?
I don't know. They said, the landlord said that what they're looking at is the advertisement for USDA is significantly less than what they currently are paying for. So
Wait a minute, say that again?
the advertisement for what they want for all USDA is significantly less square footage than what they currently have.
So the USDA here is saying they need less square footage than what they have in that
Well,
building.
yes and no, not the USDA here.
Oh.
These people don't have anything to do with it. This is all done in Little Rock.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
right, but what
These
you're
guys
s-
probably think they need more, but the
they're saying
higher ups are
less.
saying
Yeah.
Right.
less.
Yeah.
So it's very possible the landlord would put together a proposal to remodel this for both of us, or maybe remodel the other end of the building for both of us,
So
or
there's a lot of
who
room in
knows?
here.
There's a lot of potential here, yeah. But that's all up to the landlord if he wants to do it or not.
Yeah, if we did what you were saying, Josh, the NRCS person needs to move someplace.
Yeah, Sue and Dave,
So
if
then-
that was remodeled, Sue and Dave would no longer be with us. They
Right, so
would
we
be-
open up a couple of rooms.
But that would be more than what we probably need or can afford
Yeah.
if we just use that space there for us. So there'd
And
have
if
to
they
still be
go-
some other remodeling.
If they go to the other side of the building, does FSA have room enough for
Yeah,
that?
I don't know, they would have to redo the way they.
So you're saying if those two get pulled out, you have more room than what you need there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my opinion. Like I said, we need to work that out, but.
Yeah, so.
The
that-
other thing is, one of the things that's been brought up by the landlord back when they bought the place and, or I guess when we started using this area, that maybe they would make a conference room they would rent out to everybody. So we wouldn't have to have that included in our square footage, but we would rent that once a month or a couple times a month if we have a
Yeah.
committee meeting or whatever.
Could be like that room.
So there's
back there.
possibilities of things like that that would drastically change the square footage that we need to rent.
And I'm just looking at this and here goes.
There's a lot of room here.
Is that the outside wall there?
No, that's a conference room, or a lunchroom and stuff,
Okay,
Outside
so
wall,
there's-
be on the other side of the
So
place.
there's a big area back there, yeah.
yeah. The other thing though is the USDA required, is it 24 public parking spots and 6 personal, so they're talking 30 parking spots. And I think it's gonna be tough to find that here, but I could be wrong. So there's gonna have to be some adjustments made somewhere, no matter what happens.
They wanted to pull, and again, with the USDA stuff, it's all no different than the post office stuff that we have. They've got the list, but that's just what they want. It doesn't mean that it has to be there. So there's exclusions, they create exclusions to all these things all the time. So, because it's just not feasible. You know, there is no such location, thus, it is what it is. Like the pull-through drive, the pull-through that was in there, and some of these
Yeah.
things. There's a lot of places that don't have that. Describe pull-through. Well, if I can pull through and drive back out the parking lot, is that pull-through? Does it need to be this pull-through? You know, it's kind of open to interpretation a little bit, but, yeah, I just can't see, if they can't figure out how to make this building work, I don't know what else they're gonna do. And to keep them together, anyway.
There have been a lot of offices, there's not very many new ones in the state the last few years. But some of the older offices, there are people that's what they do. They build and rent to USDA and SWCDs. So
Just like-
there's a number of the offices around the area that are owned by the same people. And they just rent it out to whatever county it is. And so there's a possibility maybe somebody would come in with something like that too. Over the last 10 years, there's been a couple people that have come to our office asking Sue or I or John, questions about possibly building something. I have no idea though if they're gonna submit something or not.
So what would Andy and Jerry be doing?
Working on some of these details of what kind of square footage we wanted and
Listening to his
Why we
demands
needed-
and try to work it out.
well, like I said, we definitely
Right?
don't, we can't have this size
Pretty
of
much,
space
yeah.
that's over there right now. If just moving
You're
it
looking to
around.
reduce.
It would have to be smaller than that. And like I said, Pete, the SRF, or the Joint Powers Board engineer, they're no longer renting from us after the end of this month, after the end of the year.
And
So
for
we don't
us,
need that space.
2, 3, 4 employees and
4.5,
4.5,
because we have that summer.
6, 8 parking spots, it'd be great, plenty with the vehicles, cause you'd have,
If we're co-located, if we're right beside USD, then we have all their parking spots for our customers.
well, and that should be off the square footage, that's actually a city regulation
Yeah.
thing. You know, that's gonna depend on that too. So you would, because we have, what, 3 vehicles, 4 employees, that's 7 parking spots, plus a couple for foot traffic, so you need
Yeah.
less than 10 spots.
And then I think, Sheila, you got it on your agenda for
Yeah,
next week.
I put a memo into the packet for discussion. You know, we didn't know any details other than, hey, this is a possibility.
Yeah.
Well, I will
Because right
say,
now, Sheila's a county employee 50/50, 60/40, 60/40, and also Whitewater Joint Powers Board employee. She's got an office space down there and up here. Do they want to continue that or not?
is the,
It's very, very handy, a lot of times, working things together, but is it handy enough for the cost or the space?
are the utilities included with their rent right now?
Yes.
Not right now, that's
They're
paid separate.
Separate, so that
So
you have
we-
your own water meter, we have our own water meter, we have our own,
Oh, no,
we have
I
our
thought
own heat.
it's together, but we
But
reimburse we don't pay the landlord, we pay CCC.
Credit Commodity Corporation.
They basically have all the utilities and we
Yes,
reimburse.
we
for-
reimburse them for part of it.
Right, because I'm just looking at the rent.
But the
Basically, the
new
rent
lease-
is, for what we have there is about $1,000 a month plus utilities.
Yeah,
It's prorated because you're paying your portion of whatever it is, so
Yeah.
basically it's $1,000 a month right now, plus utilities.
which is, I can't remember, is it,
And the smaller the area, typically the less the utilities, you know, so.
what was I say?
So of your
Oh,
4.5 employees, one of them, the half is Sheila?
No, the half is the summer intern.
Which sits in the same cubicle
Yeah.
between, yeah.
Right, and I know we've had this discussion on, over the past year, space at Winona County. When you're not there, what happens with that space?
I'm not there.
Exactly.
So I guess what I'm implying is the taxpayer's already paying for a full-time spot for her. We haven't been, if, I understand it's more convenient for you to be up here, but if you could just get by with, electronic communications, we're paying for a spot for you down there, right?
So you would technically need 4 offices, possibly room for an expansion to 5 or
Probably we
6.
need 5 because we have that intern and then we need something for that intern. But yeah,
I was just suggesting, I suggested more than one, that she's at one place or the other.
We've talked about that. I don't remember how long. We've talked about it off and on over the years too.
But you don't use this spot here very often anyway.
Well, I come here about 2 days a week, but, then there's COVID. Right now, I'm trying to be here 1 day a week and then 1 day at the county and working from home the other 3 days.
There really is no other place in town.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
that's
the only
either
other
this
thing is
building-
buildings. If somebody buys a lot to build for everybody, that's all,
It's
the only
really
thing I
just
can
Yeah,
think
the
of.
only other thought I would have is, I know it's not Lewiston, but does St. Charles have a spot for you, and what day?
There's a
This is
very
really
good
the heart of the
possibility,
county.
but the USDA's ad is specific to Lewiston.
Is the ultimate goal of the SWCD to be attached with?
Not
The-
attached, but it's.
The closer that we are, the better, because we do, well, Lance is gone now, but Lance and Dave have been out surveying and, working on all these projects that we're sharing, cost share and stuff. If we're in different towns, it's gonna be really tough. The closer we are, the easier that is. Amanda does a ton of CRP plans
So
that.
my question
are
is,
really tough
is
to
it,
connect
is
with.
it for association like it is now where, so I'm just looking at that side of the building, this side of the building,
That would work too.
or what happened? Right, you know, is it, do we need to be like this so when somebody comes in, they see us for publicity? Or is it, we just need to be able to be somewhat,
Close enough to be,
like, I'm saying like opposite ends of town, two totally different towns, a 2x6 wall or a block? You fill me in, where do y'all need to be in
so
that?
like
You know what I
Olmsted
mean?
County, they're on opposite sides of town, but
Yeah.
it's Rochester.
Right. But you see where I'm
If you're
going with
looking
this.
at
Is it a
Lewiston,
2x4
opposite
wall,
sides.
because y'all need to be able to knock
Yeah.
3 times? I'm serious, you
That-
know,
that
is it
would
where
be
you gotta
great. That
go
would be
to
the
their
best.
desk, like the way it is now?
But it doesn't have to be.
Right, or can it be opposite ends of the building, can it be a block away, can it be the other side of town, or is it a whole nother town away too far?
Closer the better, I believe,
Yeah,
because they work so much together.
But if they're putting walls and all this in between, they don't want you to commingle, you know, does that eliminate?
But still, walking out
My-
one
my
door
hope
into
is
the
if-
other is gonna be better.
Well, you're not allowed to have the code or whatever, you know what I mean, but yeah. no,
Well, I mean,
my hope is if we are side by side,
Yeah,
my hope is we have those, hotel room doors.
Oh, yeah.
Where there's a lock on both sides,
Yeah.
so if we're gonna work together today, we each unlock our doors and we can go back and
which
forth.
this scenario doesn't work.
Right.
What about,
I don't even
what
know
is
if
it
USDA
about
would
that
approve that,
front
though.
that doesn't work right now? What is it about that side of the building?
It would have to be, everything would have to be walled down the middle, or down somewhere. You know, the conference room,
So we would lose the conference room, you would lose, you'd have to figure out how to make the bathroom work. They could put a door in behind Wanda's desk, you know, there and here, and everybody's got double-sided lock doors, or, you know what I mean, and you could joint share that room. Bathrooms the same way, joint share that room, and then if you got too much square footage, they take the back side of the lunchroom there, wall that off somewhere by your office, reduce the square footage, they gain the square footage, life is good.
so I actually put together my thought of remodeling that, but it really is meaningless until we know if the landlord's actually gonna even put together a proposal. And one of the discussions, they've been emailing and texting me quite a bit the last couple of weeks. One of the things they were asking or mentioned is if you saw in the ad at the bottom, there's a local, broker
Yeah.
that they're supposed to be working with. They have talked with him, and he's come up and reviewed both ends of the building with him, and they've talked about ideas, and they may actually put together a proposal for both. You know, here's proposal A, here's proposal B.
I just don't really see the need to leave this building. There's
Yeah.
gotta be something in here that works, right? So,
Yeah. And
But you're
They-
gonna be
they've
two
done a
separate
lot of work.
entrances, they want, like you said,
yeah, it'd be a
mentioned.
separate entrance,
Yeah, that's the thing. You'd
but
kinda
it'd just be remodeled.
have your own identity more than it is now.
I have talked with a few, I talked to Leanne Buck from the State Association. I got an email before the ad was in the paper from NRCS saying, this is going out this week, or tomorrow, I think they said. And they said, talk to Leanne for more information. So I contacted Leanne, and she's like, this is the first I heard of it. She said the USDA gives me a list, they update the list every so often of offices that are on track for new space, and you're not on it.
how big is this, how big is the piece in between here? That was the old hardware store. Do you know how wide that is?
No,
Step that off.
there's a lot of room here to do stuff if they want to
Oh,
do
yeah.
it, and
Is
if
that vacant
USDA
too?
wants to go.
Well,
It's storage.
storage, Brian always used it for storage, I don't know.
And
'Cause
that's
it's
what the
not-
landlord uses for their storage. That's the main reason they bought the building. They bring some of their cold storage up here, and they use that for
Now, this might surprise everybody, but I think, government organizations don't talk to each other.
so
Because
I'm not hearing you.
when I went to the annual NECD convention, I had a pretty long conversation with Troy. He said, your organization is number 4 on the list.
Yep.
So,
Or on the list for what?
For new
for a new
space.
building,
This USD office.
yeah, either remodel or build or whatever, but we were number 4.
So after I talked to Leanne, she talked to the state office, USDA, I don't know if it was, I think it was FSA, they're in charge of the facilities for all USDA, not, for NRCS and FSA. So she called me back and said, yep, you're right. The advertisement is going out, they just never gave me an updated list.
What'd the building sell for?
I have no idea.
That'll be in our tax deal.
But she gave me a name of a few districts that have gone through this in the last few years, and I contacted them, and all of them said, you're on your own. Not as far as they're not gonna help me, but they said USDA, and they all said it's not the local people. It's being run by the state office, and I think that email came out of Little Rock, Arkansas. I could be wrong. That office, they tell the locals, you will not discuss this with anybody. And they do all the state office, or the national office does all the negotiating for the space. I think they may work with the locals a little bit as far as floor plan, but the national office does everything. And they said, the one office, they didn't know anything was happening until the landlord came to the district and said, we're remodeling our office space for USDA, and we only have, 50 square foot, whatever it was, left for you guys if you want it. And it was already a done deal with USDA, and the district didn't have a choice. In that situation, they looked around town for other space, couldn't find anything, and ended up going back to the landlord and adding on for them. And what they had to do is, because they were the ones getting the add-on, they're basically almost kicked out of their space, had to get rental units to put a bunch of their stuff in, and worked within the construction of remodeling. They said they had sheets over everything, they had dust flying everywhere, contractors working right beside them as they're trying to work. They said it was not pretty.
Yeah.
Another district had a very similar situation, except the USDA got a new building, and it didn't include the district at all, so the district ended up staying where they were at and remodeling to fit them.
Yeah, it'd be, very advantageous and practical to do it within this building, because whether they redo this or redo that, redoing that would cause a little disruption because we'd have to move over here for a period of time.
Hopefully.
But if they did this and we continued there,
Until this was done. Yeah.
Well, that's assuming that they don't rent on one end or the other between now and then. Because I know they've got to advertise on the door, so.
But the landlord would really like to keep all of us in the building. That they've told us, they bought the place, was it July 1st, I think is when they first took ownership. And they've been doing a lot of work, and they've been communicating with us a lot, and they really would like us all to stay. It's not, the USDA part is out of everybody's hands. The best they can do is put together an offer and hope that the USDA picks it. And my hope is that whoever USDA picks, we are able to work with them too for this. And it's hard for us to just to put an ad in the paper, because we don't know what their situation is going to be. It's almost like we have to kind of follow and step in at the right time.
yeah, it sounds like this landlord's
If it's this landlord,
easier to work with.
I think we'll be able to get that worked out if USDA, if they get another offer, they take that other offer, hopefully we can find out early enough in the process to have us included.
You could make counteroffer.
Well, we would have to, if the USDA picks it, we can't stop that. That's one of the things that happened, I guess it's not quite the same. Up in Olmsted County, the county said the district is all the county employees. So the county said, we have space for you here, and also asked USDA to move in with them, and USDA wouldn't move. So the counties on, the SWCD is with the county on the east side of town, and the USDA is on the west side of town. And they do work together on some projects, but it's not nearly as efficient and easy for the landowners, especially to, they can't just walk across the hall or walk to the other end of the building or whatever. So those are all things we need to just discuss and get some ideas of what we want to do and how we want to do it.
Okay.
And our suggestion is the Partner Relations Committee. It's up to you guys if that's what you want to do or not.
I suppose that'll be continued on for next month's discussion, but
I don't know if do you want a motion, or do you just want to, I don't know how you want to handle it, to ask the Partner Relation Committee to do it, or if you want a motion to form a different committee, or?
I think it's just an open discussion. It's pretty fluid at this point where I don't think we've got to get real static about anything. But,
Yeah,
you know, we can have, if you guys want to get together and have a think tank session, but you really can't decide anything until you know what they're gonna do.
yeah.
I mean,
Right,
that's the
it's a wait
reality
and
of
see
it.
game.
It's a wait and see game. I
The
mean,
biggest thing is to kind of get Whitewater's opinions and things like that, and kind of put together, you know, do we want 1,400 square feet, or do we need 1,400 square feet? Do we need 2,000 square feet? You know, how are we gonna break that down? And a lot of it, I think the biggest question really is, if we don't have to have our own conference room, that saves us a lot of square footage. If the landlord does what they had talked about before, and maybe putting together a conference room that they just rent out to, not just us, but the USDA or somebody else in the public, that we can use for our board meetings, we just rent it on a month-to-month basis. It saves us a lot of square footage to have to rent on a daily basis.
And you probably have a much nicer conference room,
Yeah,
much larger.
and we definitely need a larger one.
Does somebody want to make a motion to state that we will have the Partner Relations Committee handle the, when the time comes to review the space needed or whatever, go over with the with Daryl to see what's needed and
I'll make a motion that we create the Partner Relationships Committee to begin to assess the
Well,
situation.
it's already created.
Or to move forward, excuse me, not create, I realize it exists, to move forward with that, yes. To begin a discussion.
all in favor of the motion?
Would,
Who did second it?
Jerry did.
just one question. How are these guys gonna be brought up to speed?
Well, I'll go through
You'll go through.
the ad, and I'll go through some of our history of what's been going on over the last 10 years anyway.
Okay.
And
Very
We have to have a
loose,
meeting.
this is a really loose
It's a,
discussion.
yeah, it's not gonna be.
Very loose discussion.
Yeah.
We're
And
not
when
going
is
up
this-
floor plans or anything like that.
When does this ad close? You said tomorrow?
That ad for them closes tomorrow,
Okay.
but that's just a expression of interest. Then the USDA would start going through those expressions of interest and working out who they wanna.
It could be 6 months or a year before we even know anything.
Yeah.
When Leanne talked to the state office, she asked them, and they said it sounded like the entire process is 18 to 24 months.
Okay. Good thing I just got reelected. You could still be on.
And the other thing to remember too is January, you guys put together the committees. So if somebody didn't want to or somebody really wanted to be on that committee, there's a chance to readjust that committee then next month.
Okay, all in favor of the motion that was made by Jerry, seconded by Jerry?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is the network for remote file access and computers update.
So the computers and software have been ordered. The semi-rugged laptops came in last Friday, so they're gonna start working on loading all the software and getting them set up. The standard laptop is still waiting production because there's apparently a shortage of LCD screens in that size or style, which I've heard of, but I didn't know that it was just a certain size. So we're waiting on that. The firewall set up for secure remote access. The company has had a contract that we need to sign before they'll even purchase the equipment and stuff. So we sent the contract to MCIT to review, and we also sent it to the county attorney to review. MCIT had a lot of concerns about the contract, and the county attorney had a lot of concerns and even recommended that we look at alternatives with the county instead of going with this contract. So I talked to county IT, and they're working on a way to set our network up to be secure and be able to work remotely. If that all goes through, then we wouldn't have this contract with the other company. We're still purchase the computers and software from them, but we wouldn't have the firewall and contract with them if this all works out with the county. And hopefully we'll find that out in the next couple of weeks. So we're working on it. I started this whole process in August or July. I think August is when I brought it to you guys. I had started the process in July. So it's not I thought it would go a lot faster than this. But we're still moving forward slowly.
Okay. We have to have board action on AIS prevention plan for 2021.
Did you have something you wanted to show them?
Well, the plan is in that folder too, but I see you've got the breakdown of,
Oh, you had two things in there. I wasn't sure which one.
yeah, I guess this is the second page of that, probably the most important page, yeah, the updates for the summer. But as usual, we did our, update of our prevention plan. Really the only thing that were changes in it is the field season update and then the budget. So this year, we were able to monitor 20 trout stream accesses, which was a really good year for us. The weather really held out really nice for us. So, one access was on Bear Creek, 4 were on Rolling Stone Creek, 2 were on Stockton Valley Creek, and 10 were on Garber Brook, and 3 on Money Creek. Rescue crayfish were identified at Money Creek, down in Wiscoy Valley. Otherwise, we identified curly pondweed in the Rolling Stone, Garber Brook, and Money Creek as well. We've been working with a gal from DNR about non-native Phragmites. We did identify that in Minnesota City along Garber Brook. And they're working on having a crew come out next summer and spraying patches of non-native Phragmites. So we're going to be working with them. So anytime we find patches, we're going to be letting them know right away so they can put it on their list. They're working in all of southeast Minnesota to try to eradicate patches of non-native Phragmites.
Do you want to explain to them what that is?
Yeah. So non-native Phragmites is a really tall, kind of almost an ornamental grass is what it is. And it likes wet hydric areas, kind of marshy areas, and it creates a monoculture, and it's a very aggressive plant, spreads by rhizomes, and it's actually very difficult to kill. We do have a native Phragmites species, which if you walk around the West Lake Winona or drive along Highway 61 past the lakes, you're gonna see some tall, nice kind of grass with a nice little bush kind of on top. That's all native Phragmites along that stretch there. So that's all nicely balanced in our ecosystem, good stuff to have around. The non-native Phragmites can get 15 feet tall. Monoculture, thicker than you can hardly walk through.
It's super aggressive.
Yeah, it's just a nasty, nasty grass, so, they're working on trying to eliminate as many patches as they can find. If you go south on 61, kind of halfway between Winona and the Cross, there's a patch along 61 down that way, that they're targeting as well, so, working with them to help, eradicate that in Winona County. We were out pulling yellow iris again this year. So let's see, this year there wasn't very much, however, it did seem to spread a little bit along the west bank of the East Lake, which we had not seen it previously. So but like I said, there's quite a bit less this year than in years past. So hopefully our past 5 years of polling has really started to show its efforts. So, Healthy Lake Winona also helps when we do that, or at least John Howard, what the city does when he can. So.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why are those lines on the screen?
It's the projector. I was talking to Lance about that earlier too. It's probably time to get a new one.
Okay, so it's something to do with that.
Yeah.
'Cause it's not on my screen here, but it
It's
is up
not.
on the wall.
Yeah, and it'll go kind of in and out sometimes where it'll kind of get better or worse, it seems.
Okay.
This is the worst I've seen it. It was like that last month a little bit too. But
Yeah, invasive lines.
yeah. Yeah. We also worked with Winona County this summer. They had volunteers and other organizations sitting at boat launches just to observe and watch people as they put their boats in, took them out to see if they were doing their clean, drain, dispose actions. Found that most people were. I haven't seen the full data from that yet, but we sat at the Prairie Island launch and watched people for a few days there, so. And then did some online trainings and conferences. There were no, well, other than the boat show, we didn't have any in-person gatherings or events this year. So we did a few online training things with the apprentice. But otherwise, there's some pictures there. The first picture on the left is Michael holding a handful of Chinese mystery snails out by the airport. There's a whole bunch out there in the backwater sloughs and things like that. It's a non-native snail. We've got the native brown mystery snail. The Chinese mystery snail came in with the aquarium trade. People would dump their tanks. And then the rusty crayfish in the middle is from Money Creek, and then the picture on the right is Michael monitoring in Money Creek.
How big is that crayfish?
They're 6 inches or so, yeah.
It's at least that long.
Yeah, their claws are huge. It's larger than some of the ones the native ones you'll find. I did find some native ones when I was out trapping in Money Creek as well, which was really cool to find. One of them was as large as the rusty crayfishes were, but most of them were smaller.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yes, actually, if you go down south, that's one of the primary things in a crawfish boil. So they're native to the Ohio River Valley and further south into Louisiana and things like that, so. They're brought in through the bait trade, released, and, they're very aggressive. They like a trimmed lawn, so they'll come in and they'll cut down the vegetation and make their burrows into the side of stream banks. And there causes problems. There's no vegetation to take the hit from, the water coming down, and then the water gets those stream banks and causes erosion to cut more and more, so they're pretty destructive.
For a little thing, they do a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. So, then if you go to the next page, yeah, so next year, our goal is to monitor at least another 20 trout streams, track and remove more rusty crayfish from Money Creek, and then assist with public outreach and education. Hopefully we're able to do that next year. And then also look to hire an intern. I haven't heard back yet from Brian Hubbard about when to apply for the CCM apprentice. So hopefully we hear about that soon. And then our budget, so our 2021 budget is based on state allocation from 2020. which was $90,029. I think that's all it is with that line across. And so it'll staff just over half of my position. There's cost in there for meetings and trainings, CCNO apprentice, and then outreach education and supplies and equipment as well, so.
When she says staff her position, that's using the Bowser billing rate?
Yes.
She doesn't make a hundred.
I do not make that, that would be nice. That was 55%.
That's taking into all of our expenses
Yes, that's.
for her position. That's it?
Yeah, the rest of it is just the normal, kind of actions that we do while we're out and about, things that we try to attain. These are the same every year, just kind of outline what we do, when we're in the field, things like that. And then try to work towards, or a lot of it's already been done, it's completed, and,
So we need our board to approve that because we are doing the, implementing the plan for the county.
yeah.
And you guys approved it last month.
November 24th, the consent agenda, so.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the AIS prevention plan?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Motion carries. Buffer law, any update on that, or is it all?
Just a little, we have two that are still sitting as non-compliant. And I think I mentioned last month about the one working with the DNR, but DNR got delayed and they'll hopefully get it done next year. It's a stream restoration project through the whole corridor there. And actually, driving by, it looks like he left the buffer, but we didn't go out and measure because we know they're gonna be working on it. The other site, he established a buffer, but when Amanda looked at it, it's still a little bit too narrow, so he said he'll get it out to her flags next spring. So once those two are done, then that's when I would like to do a thing in the papers, thanking everybody, we're at 100% now. And then I've been working on the compliance monitoring, which is going back and reviewing a third each year, and that's been going very good. I'm almost done with that. There's a few sites that I couldn't get to or couldn't see that I was waiting for the county aerial photography to come through, that I can just double check them on here. And it sounds like that could be any day now. They haven't, they're working on it. So.
Okay. Steve, you got an update on with the county proceedings?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I think it's great news that you're recording this and that it's broadcast. I don't know if there's any way for you to tell if how many people watch it or whatever, but I just feel like it's great for the public to be able to, full transparency, see, and it just kind of flows into what I've found over the years that I've been in office. Township officers and their meetings are just ultra efficient, local, small town city councils efficient. You're super efficient here, and as you go up the chain, county, state, federal, it just becomes less and less and less efficient, and they talk about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, trillions. If they could watch this, every dollar you guys scrutinize here, that's gonna do nothing but help your cause. So I'm glad to see that it's being broadcast to the public, so I think it's good. Plenty going on at the county. Our agenda for tonight is 570 pages. A lot of what I suppose will be controversial stuff. We'll be doing our county committee appointments to planning commission, board adjustment, or we'll either be discussing that or sometimes we do it this meeting, sometimes the next meeting, sometimes the first meeting of the year. County board chair and all that implies, and the chair having the power to make some of these other appointments to these other committees. So that's on our discussion. The jail size, that's on our discussion. And then One other thing that's kind of been an internal discussion that hasn't yet come to the county board, but, Darrell, you just mentioned optometry. Kay and I had an internal, meeting where we're just discussing whether the county will, buy LiDAR imagery throughout the county, and, the county sees it as a valuable tool. The surveyor, county surveyor, and that private industry sees it as a very valuable tool for the county to have. My first thought went to SWCD. LiDAR is like highly accurate. If 1 inch of soil is either gained or removed, you'd be able to have that information available on your laptop right here. I would guess that soil and water would have access to all that as well, right?
And the public.
And the public. So maybe my question for you is, before this goes to county board, and I, since I'm the, really kind of be the liaison from that committee to the county board, I see it as being a very valuable tool in many instances. And then one spot where my concern would be is, as a landowner, here's one more piece of information that the government has on my property that they could use against me. I mean, would you guys be like, okay, we can see you've lost 1 inch of soil in this ravine. I guess you don't really have any enforcement authority, or could you see any of that going awry down the line, or is there just nothing but good things that could come out of this?
So the only way we could see if there's an inch is if we have two of them side by,
Well, you'll get that into the future.
Yeah, and so maybe down the road you could see
Yeah,
that.
you'll be able to compare. I mean, this wouldn't just be a one-time.
What we use it for, we, what is it, 08, I think is the pictometry, or the LiDAR we have
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, but this
And-
is way more accurate than
Yeah.
pictometry.
No, the LiDAR we have now is
From 08.
is here, and this one's gonna be here.
It's 12.
But we even use that one for some of our preliminary cost estimates for building a pond. We can, if it's so overgrown with trees that we can't make a survey, we can use
Yeah,
that.
yeah, it
to-
eliminates the vegetation.
Yeah, and get at least a rough estimate on it. So we
It
use it.
doesn't sound like it'd be a
at
rough
our
estimate
CS
anymore. It'd be
Yeah.
it'd probably be down to, a partial part of an inch.
I saw a presentation from Goodhue SWCD, because Goodhue County was one of the pilot ones for this high-end LiDAR. And you could pick out the yellow line on the blacktop road. It showed up as a different elevation than the road. It's like-
It is. I mean, usually a lot of them are ground out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Increasing accuracy and decreasing expensive mistakes with projects and things, I would see, property owners having that as an asset. As far as, planning and environmental services, we don't have time to go looking for trouble. So, we would use it just as an update, because 2008 is a long time ago now. This is an improved, with improved features and accuracy. But the highway department in particular was very eager to
Oh, yeah.
try to move this forward.
I see a lot of,
What is the cost of this to the county?
not that much,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
90,000.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean,
Well-
there's some state money involved too, so, it's like this is the portion we're chipping in. And City of Winona was gonna chip in 5, and then, Dave Kramer had some chats with them and said, come on, you can do, maybe a little bit better than that, so they would chip in 10, and so it's kind of a consortium.
And there's other
Well, the
places.
total cost was 90,000, the county's portion was maybe 50, or what was it? I
Yeah,
forget the numbers,
it was around 50.
Dave Kramer estimated that just through inefficiencies that would be eliminated, it would probably pay for itself in less than 24 months. No, it wouldn't pay for itself in 1 year, but it might pay for itself in 2 years. So the county would, after 3 years, be better than cost neutral on it, and then everyone else would have all this information.
It's public.
It's
Yeah.
public information.
Yes.
Yeah. You guys would have it, public could access it, everyone would have it. I was the only one who had any reservations, I'm just like, you got that much more information on my property.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I mean, it's a, you go out and anything, I mean, it's just that much more
It's how would they ever use that? I mean, again,
Just
Well,
I don't
the
think
only
you
place
get
I
used
thought of
against
was you guys, I mean, you could say, we're getting into enforcement. And you've lost, we can tell you, you've lost this much soil in the last 4 years, and, or you got a problem going on here, and we can monitor that all now, just right down to a tenth of a fraction.
Like so
of
many
an inch.
things, you go
But it
into
might
best
be a good
intention,
thing,
but
though,
somebody
Bob.
else can flip the script. and
So,
tell me
I
that
mean,
somebody's using
I don't see
against
that
you.
with this board,
No.
but, and just like what you guys were discussing before about the audit, it's not you and the existing staff, it's a new board and different staff in the future. That they
You
see
set a
these things.
precedent for
You're setting,
everybody to
you're setting
follow.
the table for the
And there's
future.
always
We're
a
setting the
bad egg
table
in
for the
every
future.
crowd that'll take advantage of something,
Yeah,
or
but my
use it,
sense is
flip it,
that-
and use it against you.
My sense is that information is gonna be so much more readily available in another 10 years, that this is probably gonna be irrelevant, because they're gonna have 10 other ways to figure out where my soil is, or what my soil is. I don't know.
It's kind of on that same wavelength, only going the other direction. If it's something that is redone often enough, some of these projects that we do, you know, we have to be prioritized, targeted, measurable. And if you have a couple of years' worth, somebody wants to fix a stream bank or fix a gully, we can use that and show that, okay, Bowser or State or whoever, that gully has moved that much in the last 5 years, that's why we need to do this project. And the landowner is the one that came to us to do it, we're using that LiDAR to justify our cost share.
So, by and large, I'm gonna guess that this, organization would say, county, go ahead and, get that information, have it available, or you think about it, and when it won't come to the county, I don't know when it's gonna come to the county board, before your next meeting, I don't know when it'll be on there.
I'm not sure who's, putting the
Yeah,
request for board
Ken,
action
yeah, Ken.
together yet. It wasn't generated from my department, so I don't know if Ken's doing it or if Dave's
Yeah.
doing it.
If you have thoughts or concerns on it, just get hold of me and I'll bring it to the board. So, I don't have too much else. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Okay. Okay,
Just a couple quick things. Megan Cagley, our new planner, had the chance to zip into septic training at Mankato this week, so I was gonna bring her along to, Sheila and I were gonna introduce her to all of you. Trying to get into septic training is really challenging, and so she's there all week, and she's knocked off every chunk of training that she can. She's getting up to speed really quickly and looks forward to meeting everybody in January. Since a month ago, we've had 3 manure spills and 2 fuel oil spills, one of which ended up in Burns Valley Creek. So emergency management and my office and our feedlot officer have been hopping. 2 of the manure spills were truck rollovers, one of which ended up breaking a wheel off. Just caught an edge, a soft edge, in case somebody was adjusting the heat. And
So the Burns, are you talking the Burns by Winona or the one down by the Crescent?
the Burns Valley Creek fuel oil spill is the one down by Winona. Yeah. Somebody walking their dog smelled it and saw it in the creek, and then emergency management and sheriff's got booms out. And then MPCA actually did trace that one back. I can't share all the details, but they're working with them, and they'll have a mitigation consultant and so on. So, we don't always get to find out, like the fish kill, 2 years ago, we don't always get the word from MPCA what happened at the end of it. But the response, like one of the manure spills was on a weekend, and Carly, I called her after I got the duty officer call, and she was in her car like 15 minutes later, and boom, she's action oriented in the right way, and working with the spill generator to get it cleaned up and checked back a bunch of times. So all those have been resolved, with the exception of the last fuel oil one, and that's in process. But that's kind of unusual for my office to have that much going on in a short amount of time. Usually it's a couple of years before you have that much. So, in the case of the manure tanks and things, they got another tanker in there and, got most of it, and one of them was just a grassy area, so there wasn't a lot of impact to groundwater. But The Oriental Bittersweet interns of the 2-year grant, 2020 and 2021, the crew of interns we have to rehire for the next year. This is the procedure for it. So they're wrapping up, but they've had great working weather, and they've been working in different valleys than last year and doing public outreach and education. But they've also been working in Stone Point and found some new areas. We also found 5 deer stands and a bunch of critter cams on county property. So I didn't want my interns killed, so we do a little posting and little reminders to some of the neighbors. And so those, and the sheriff's department and a few of the folks that are up on the site. So we got those gone. And but they also have been finding swaths of green and barberry, as I alluded to earlier. I think I told this group that too. So they're hitting that at the same time. It almost seems like we might need to keep an eye on that in general, so we'll try to get some press release information out. Otherwise, that's all I have for right now.
Okay. Sue's not here today, so,
Sheila?
oh, Sheila. Yep, Sheila.
Okay, the Whitewater, for our December meeting, we had to reschedule it because of conflicts. It is next Wednesday, December 16th. And also, I have on the agenda, and Lance referred to it earlier, the cover crop contracts. I have a total of 16 cover crop contracts to pay on between Winona County and Olmsted County SWCDs. And I have the 319 nitrogen reduction grant, which most of those cover crops are under. EPA and the MPCA is authorizing a 1-year extension due to COVID. We couldn't do all the test plots this spring because of social isolation and whatnot. So Jeff Vetch will be doing those next year, so we're having another year extension on the grant. And just a FYI, Rich Hall, who's our Wabasha County Commissioner on the board, he did not seek re-election, so this will be his last meeting. And he's been doing all the meetings remotely, so he will be patching in on that meeting. But, so I'm not sure who Bob Lacus.
I know about it.
Do you? Good. I've heard great things about him. So he will be, Rich's recommendation is that Bob will pick up his duties as, so I don't know if he will be on the board coming January.
Yeah, we'll find out. I haven't talked to him about it. I graduated from high school.
Oh, you did? Okay. Yeah, I did meet him I went to one of the Wabasha County board meetings, and I did have an opportunity to meet him. I think it was last month. So anyway, that's what's going on with the Whitewater.
Okay, thank you. Supervisors, Bill, you have anything to bring up to the meeting?
No, I don't.
No? Andy?
Well, I can report on the Maslow meeting. It's really different doing it by computer. I'm being forced to do more stuff on that computer. You guys are forcing me to learn, changing an old dog here. Anyway, we had our introduction, or welcome remarks, I guess you should say, from our outgoing president, Roland Cleveland, and Leanne Buck spoke. Then, if you guys remember that David Horsage, he's a CEO and best-selling author of The Trust Edge. He talked on the 8 pillars of trust. Leanne said that they had enough feedback from him that they thought it was well worth. He came in and talked on more things other than, there's 8 pillars. He didn't expand on all 8 last year, so he finished out that this year. For those of you that don't know him, he's a world-renowned speaker on how to build trust.
Originally from Minnesota.
What?
Originally from Minnesota.
Yeah, he lives in, what's the name of
I
that
can't
town?
remember the town.
He was raised-
Central Minnesota,
He
anyway.
was raised on a farm.
Yeah, he was raised on a farm, yeah. So he's an excellent speaker. I was thinking on the way up today, I says, it's too bad that our House of Representatives and the Senate and our president couldn't sit down with him for a day and listen to him, because it'd make a hell of a difference, I think. Again, he was very good. Then we had our business meeting, went through the standing rules. They did change them a little bit because of the fact that it was virtual, and because we weren't there, there wasn't any discussion basically on the resolutions. Any resolutions that had a 66% voting on our local areas were put up for adoption.
For the
Of
state.
21, there was, what?
15 approved.
15 approved. And those that didn't get approved are automatically gonna be able to be voted on next year without any,
16 approved. So
16 approved. Nowadays, if you have a one that didn't get approved, you had to change the wording or something to put it in the next year. Because of the process this year, it can be resubmitted as is to be voted on, so, that was probably a whole 5-minute deal, the voting on all the resolutions. We just lump summed them, all 66, of those that had the 66% got approved, so.
I can tell them which ones didn't if you want.
Well, you can't.
I don't want to tell them all of them that got approved.
Well, it's,
If you're-
unless you have all the,
Well, just there was a state cost share for septic system replacement was not approved.
okay,
Increasing state cost share for unused wells sealing was not approved. Flexibility of WACA activities resulting impacts not readily quantifiable or measurable was not approved. I don't remember what this was, but MASWCD meeting and voting during federal or state emergency. I don't remember what that one was, but that was not approved. So it must have been different than what
Yeah.
was approved for this meeting. And then the reason I wanted to mention this is that short-term set-aside program to stabilize farm commodities and improve soil health, that was not approved.
and the first
That's
one I
when
didn't
it
think
came
should have been
from our
approved
area.
either. But that's beside the point.
Yeah,
I wasn't gonna argue on just one,
yeah.
because it got 66%, but,
I just wanted to bring that up because that one
Yeah.
came out of our area.
so
and
where'd you get that at? They
I
said-
was sitting and I was typing it up as I was,
Oh, because they only read the numbers when, didn't they?
no,
I didn't have that information.
Oh, that was one of the handouts that they sent out earlier.
Oh, I
Yeah.
must have not gotten that then.
But
Anyway,
I could watch on YouTube. I couldn't be part of Zoom because
Right.
that's for votings. So I was typing up notes as
Yeah.
I was watching it.
yeah, because actually the way they ran it was pretty efficient, because when a motion came up or something, you got to vote on the screen and then you had to submit, and then within 20 seconds, they had the results, and then they showed that on the, I don't know if you've seen that too?
Nope,
No, oh.
I couldn't see the results.
But yeah, it's just not like being there and discussing these things, but it was, the way it was run, it was efficient, but, and I can't remember, our vice president got moved up to president, and you got his name?
Yeah,
It's different.
where is that?
And then Chuck Roll,
So the new president is Paul Krabenhoft
yeah,
from Clay SWCD.
and then Chuck Rao
Yep.
got elected as vice president.
He's from Benton SWCD.
Yeah, so, went through the budget, which was, I mean, it basically rubber stamping it.
But there's no due increases or anything?
No, everything stayed the same that way. Then we heard from Legislation Review and Resources for SWCD. We heard from the DNR Commissioner Sarah Stroman. She actually was pretty positive. Enjoys the relationship between the DNR and Soil and Water and stuff. And then we heard from the, it's called Gulf Public. They're our basically lobby group for soil and water. They even seem pretty positive, even though COVID's out there and what's going to happen. with the budget because of COVID, you know, because a lot of money has been spent on COVID and it's gotta be replaced somehow, so. Something is either gonna be cut or there's taxes are gonna be raised a little bit, and that's gonna be a quite healthy discussion, I think, this year for our public officials. And after,
One of the things they did mention is the House has already said they're going virtual
yeah,
right away. The Senate hasn't decided yet
Yeah.
if they're gonna do a hybrid or what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring that up because that may have an effect on if we have a legislative day at the Capitol or not.
yeah. And then they announced the presidents of each, but I thought,
Yeah, I couldn't keep up with all that.
What?
Read my notes.
did they already re-elect? Because
I didn't think
isn't
they-
Jeremy Miller president of the Senate?
I thought, they must be assuming,
Okay.
because I don't think they make that decision
No,
yet, but it could
Jeremy
be.
isn't. No, they elected somebody else,
So his term is done already, yeah, then,
as far as president of the Senate,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, he would be through the first of the year, wouldn't he? Or through
Yeah,
the
we're
end of the year.
talking,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah,
next
okay.
session.
So, yeah, apparently, they had the names of the new, Senate and Congress president leaders and minority leaders and stuff already on Tuesday, so. That kinda surprised me, I thought they'd do that after,
Yeah,
because now like the new ones coming in didn't get a chance to vote on their leaders, basically.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I thought that to be strange that they had them new people already. But, and then, I guess that's pretty well it, then we were adjourned by about 5 or 10 after 12, so.
I think the one thing they did say about the legislature too is there was no real big change.
Yeah,
The numbers are about the same, most of the leaders are gonna be about the same, there's some changes here and there, but not a significant.
yeah, they had the numbers of the House Democrats who gained or lost, or and the Republicans and that kind of stuff, but I didn't jot all that down. But-
Basically, there's no big change.
No, it was all within a couple of each other.
We're still the only state that has a split, House and Senate.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, out of
Yeah,
the 50 states.
Seems odd that we'd be the only one.
Yeah, that's that Minnesota nice. Split up the duties.
That's
So,
why maybe the checks and some favor it, some don't.
yeah. The one thing I know on my slide in our screen, and I didn't know how they did it, but people could make comments or ask questions. And one guy did put on how many people are being actively involved in the meeting. And I never did see how many were. They never did give a response to that or anything, so.
And that, like I said, I was just on, the staff could only watch on YouTube. But if I was on Zoom, there is a way you can check and see all the participants. But because I didn't have Zoom, I couldn't do that.
Yeah, well, if anybody talked, then they
Would pop up.
would pop up, yeah. Otherwise, they just had the board of directors on the screens, or the speakers, or these people from Gulf, Public, you know, when they came up, all of those people involved were on the screen. Like I say,
Yeah.
it was interesting for the first time, but you still gain so much more by, like you said, you know, last year we talked to Troy for quite a while and John Jaska from Browser and stuff, so you get that one-on-one.
Yeah, a lot of times you learn more in the hallway than you do in the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
you know, and I don't know, last year was it last year? I think it was, that we met or visited with John quite a bit, and we kind of discussed the relationship between soil and water in Bowser. I don't know if we opened his eyes or if we done any good or not, but, you know, it was, I thought, very friendly, good conversation, that there's too much repetition, it seems hard to, there should be a more easygoing two-way road instead of my way all the time. And I don't know, I can honestly say I haven't heard Daryl complain about Bowser so much in the last year, so maybe it did do something good.
Maybe it's because he came to the celebration.
But anyway, I mean, those types of conversations are pretty important in my mind when you're at these conventions, and then just meeting with other soil and water members to see what they're doing and things like that, so. I know some people say maybe we should keep some of this stuff, but there's places probably where it's good for the virtual, but otherwise, there's a lot of places where it's more beneficial to have the in-person.
Well, besides all that, we didn't have recognition of outstanding conservationists.
Right. Yeah,
Things like that either.
They never even mentioned that in anything, that
Yeah.
we didn't have that. But I kind of feel that, you know, each one of those recipients kind of got shorted this year. Just like that, Paul, he said that this last year, Rollin, as being president, not being able to go around and working with people in the districts and stuff, kind of got shorted on his presidency, but that's just the way things are. So,
Okay.
the other thing is, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. It's coming up in a few weeks.
Likewise.
So, yeah, that's the end of my report.
Okay, Daryl, do you have a report to give us yet?
Yep. Just wanted to remind Bill and Jerry that, I don't know if you're both gonna be part of it or not, but there's an informal virtual meeting for the WinLAC, Winona La Crescent, One Watershed, One Plan Policy Committee, on the 14th. Is that next Monday? I don't remember, is it for both the member and alternate, or just the?
Well, ours is both,
Okay.
our committee both are supposed to attend.
So that's next week. I think Terry sent out the emails already, if I
Yes,
remember
she
right.
did.
That would
And
have
then she
a,
should have sent out a link.
did you get one, or do I
on
need to forward it?
instructions.
Yes.
You did get one? Okay. Also, just our current policy on COVID-related leave and things like that ends the end of the month, because that's when all the legislation ends. So I've been trying to keep up with things that are going on and seeing if they're passing anything new, and there's zero talk about that. All the talk about is stimulus checks and things like that, and assistance to places that have to close down or whatever. But I haven't seen anything about the coronavirus, the Family First Coronavirus Response Act that ends. And so I sent an email to Senator Smith's local representative, which is Bree Mackey, asking her, you know, if they know of anything that's going on. And she did reply and said, yes, they are working on it, and they are hoping to get something done soon. So I don't know if that means that it's not as controversial, so it doesn't make the news, or what the deal is, but apparently something's happening. So I'll probably have to create a new interim policy whenever that comes out that would start January 1st, and then we would take to you guys to formally approve something or make adjustments if needed at the January meeting then. But that's if something gets passed before the end of the year. And what I did last time, that's what we had to do last time. And I also sent it to the county attorney's office to make sure that things were legal and everything too, so I would do that if that happens this time too. So I just wanted to let you know we have something that's expiring, and it's not gone away by any stretch. And that's what I was telling Bree is, you know, it's expiring at the time it's hitting us, this part of the country or this part of the state, the hardest. And we really need something there to help protect the people if it happens. So hopefully it comes through. The other thing I just wanted to mention is you're on the Southeast Technical Support Joint Powers Board.
Yep,
Do you remember Glenn Robertson,
yep.
the Goodhue SWCD manager? He's retiring on the 22nd of December.
Yeah, I see that.
So you're the alternate for that. I don't know if you've met Glenn or not. So interim will be Bo Kennedy. My personal opinion, hopefully he applies for it, because he's been doing a lot of it already. He's been coming to a lot of the managers' meetings and things like that, and the Joint Powers Boards, and he does a good job, so I think they'll be in good hands if that happens. I think that's all I have.
Okay, Bill, you have a report on the Area 7 meeting.
No, that's just to,
We have to approve the payment for,
Yeah.
technically, we didn't know about the meeting prior
Before
to,
the-
so in order to pay Bill for attending, you guys need to make a motion, that's fine.
Approve him going to it.
okay.
So move.
Second.
Okay.
Got to vote.
We have to vote?
Yep.
All in favor of sending Bill, or
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
This was for last
Yeah.
November.
Yep.
I didn't know whether to submit it here or to the Area 7 or,
I think the local one you would submit here
okay.
is when you go to state and, or national things. Then we don't pay for that.
Yeah.
Did you guys elect a new president?
Pardon me?
Did you elect a new director or president? last
Yeah.
year?
Is it Randy Smith?
Okay,
I think so.
because weren't you co-director or co?
I still am.
Oh, you still are? Okay.
I didn't want to be.
Well, that's what I thought, and that's what I was wondering, I didn't remember you saying that you're not anymore last month, and.
I didn't want to be, so.
Andy, you want to report on the ball meeting?
It's
No, that's.
coming up.
It's coming up, yeah, next week.
Okay. And then, Josh is in here to report on.
That's next week too.
That's-
Actually, at the same time, did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that gonna be by Skype or?
Or Zoom?
Zoom.
Yep. You should have an email on that. I checked and your email address is on there, so you should have one.
I didn't see nothing since
Let me
Tuesday
know.
after the meeting
I think it
anyway.
came after.
Yeah, I think it came that day, didn't it?
Yeah, maybe after that.
Okay,
There is a phone number on there though, too, if you don't wanna look at
yeah,
the video.
well, I got the one from, when was that one, maybe July or June one, there was
Yeah,
one?
you've connected to that one.
Yeah, I still got, Emily's.
Well, it's a different address though for
Oh,
each meeting,
okay.
so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah, we had to get our computer, it's a good thing we got, HBC, because our old way wouldn't have, Cindy's, working from home, so we were both on Skyping it, or whatever you call it, Zoom at the
Zoom.
same time, so,
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
so move.
All in favor?
I
Opposed? Motion, meeting is adjourned. Next meeting will be, January 14th. Hope we don't have cold weather, colder than it is today.
I bet we will.
Probably. Remember your expense reports are due at the,
Yeah.
18th. That should be after everybody's meetings for the rest of the month then.
you get mine.
Did you send us something to me?
I did.